that has a lot of significance. Get it out of the way against an opponent and a team that Conrad, at least
it's a game that
the schedule,
just
right?
like, yeah, before the show.
Hell
no, I'm not going down the table. Absolutely not. But and get it over with. So that's
JOX. I see the phones ringing lines as soon as possible. Coming up at 11 o'clock, Mike Rodak, who covers the Alabama Crimson Tide for AL.com, he will join the program. We'll get his thoughts on Alabama missing out. The transfer portal has already been busy this morning. Today is the first official date in which people can actually submit their names and go into the transfer portal. I know a lot of people on social media last week, they were announcing their intentions. Well, this morning, and there's some paperwork involved. It's not just like, okay, I declare I'm in the transfer portal. You have to go through compliance. You have to do paperwork. And then depending on if compliance really wants to help you out and try to expedite the process. So there's a lot going on there. But let's go back to what happened on Saturday night. The College Football Playoff Committee met until about 1:30 a.m. early into Sunday morning. Then they came back. They reconvened at 8:15 a.m. on Sunday. It is interesting because College Football Playoff Executive Director Rich Clark was asked, remember that infamous webinar that I was a part of back in October? You know, he was asked the following question, what will be the treatment of the conference championship game losers? And this was a direct quote in this conversation that he had with us on the webinar. It says it depends on what the loss looks like. Now, after the first quarter and in the first half, when Clemson had a 3-touchdown lead, the general feeling was, okay, Alabama is in. If this score holds and you lose by 3 touchdowns, there's no doubt. But as that game continued to get closer and closer, and once that double-digit lead, in my opinion, started to disseminate, then all of a sudden it appeared to me that no matter what took place, whether SMU, obviously if they won, then it would have been a different story. Alabama would have been in. But as long as SMU lost by under a touchdown, in my opinion, once they made that comeback, it was going to be very difficult for Alabama, based on everything that you had seen and heard throughout the day, Landrum, that they would have been able to overcome that and get a spot.
Yeah, and you look at the teams that were considered to be in the college football playoff mix prior to, either they won their conference championship game or they were still, the extra game did not hurt them. And that was the precedent that we were talking about. It didn't matter with Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game versus Arizona State, but Clemson, they went out, they handled their business, they did what they had to do, and for Rhett Lashley and the politicking that he was doing last week, you give his team credit, falling behind by multiple scores early and being able to come back and make that a game, and you lose at the Horn. That was going to be tough for the committee. That would have been, if the committee had decided that SMU was going to be out and they were going to include Alabama, there was going to be uproar, especially because of the two leagues in the ACC and the SEC and what happened to Florida State last year. But I do go back to this, and some Bama fans might not want to hear it, but I think most of them, they're smart and they realize this is what it is. You could have handled your business and made this a lot tougher decision for the committee had you won in Norman, Oklahoma, whatever that win looked like.
I contend this. I think if Alabama only loses by a touchdown in Norman, Oklahoma, they're in the playoff. I mean, you just cannot defend a 3-touchdown loss on the road.
You can't. Not to that Oklahoma team. You can't do it.
On the road in the SEC, I mean, listen, nobody was talking about the Vanderbilt loss. That's not what kept Alabama. And just watching some of this, the brilliance of Twitter, of people coming at me and going on and on about, what Greg Burns said and hey, dumbass, talking to me. Alabama didn't lose a non-conference game. Why are you talking about non-conference games? No, the point of that whole conversation is the fact that you play such a tough SEC schedule week in and week out. Why do you need to go out and play a top-notch non-conference opponent when you are going to places like Norman, Oklahoma, a week before the Iron Bowl, which is a very difficult place to play, period, Anywhere you go in the conference is going to be tough. So why does Alabama or any other SEC team, if you're not going to be awarded because of your strength of schedule, which includes non-conference games, there's no need to, because SMU and Indiana has just proven you don't have to play anybody and you can be in the college football playoff.
Well, and to a different degree, though, Pat, you can also be the beneficiary like Texas was this year with the conference schedule that they got. And think about it. Prior to playing Texas A&M at the end of the season, their toughest game was Vanderbilt.
True, but they did go to Michigan and knock off a Michigan team that made Ohio State look completely irrelevant.
But prior to that, what were we saying about that Michigan team?
No, I understand that. But once again, and I stated this back in October, this college football committee, this was destined to be a disaster. I told everybody on this program in October, when I walked off that webinar and saw what a disaster this was going to be, they lived up to everything that they were supposed to. They were clueless on criteria. They were hell-bent on no transparency. 1 week wins mattered. It was all about how many wins you had, unless you were Army. Then all of a sudden, Army, because you lost one game to Notre Dame, then all of a sudden, Army drops out of the top 25. But meanwhile, you've got Indiana and SMU. They continue to rack up easy wins, but they continue to be a top 10 team. Once again, the hypocrisy of this committee was across the board. But get ready, folks, because the commissioners and the presidents are going to meet on January the 20th, and this crap's going to get fixed. No way Greg Sankey is going to let this go on one more season. It ain't going to happen. The changes will be immediate, and you're not going to have a ridiculous Arizona State and Boise getting buys when teams that win tougher conferences have got a tougher road to the national championship.
Yeah, and seeding, and that is something else. There are so many different layers of this being in the first year of this 12-team playoff that need to be addressed moving forward. And we kind of thought that when we initially got it, when they finally were able to come to terms and at least get a 2-year deal for the current format. Going back, though, Pat, you talk about strength of schedule. Now, not only do you want to go out and you start looking at non-conference games and looking at those future dates and going, whoa, we're not sure we want to do this. Now, how many SEC administrators, athletic directors, really head football coaches want to vote for that 9th SEC conference game?
That
you
will never
kiss
happen.
That goodbye.
That ain't
See
happening.
You later.
I mean, because ESPN has made it perfectly clear they're not going to pay for it. Okay, they're not all of a sudden going, unless they fire Pat McAfee, they're not going to come up with hundreds of millions of dollars to pay for this. So that's not happening. So why would an athletic director in their right mind vote for an additional conference game because you've been disrespected because they don't believe the 8 games that you played was tough enough? Forget about it. That ain't happening. I mean, I heard what Nick Saban said yesterday, but Nick Saban, that's not reality, Coach. Sorry.
What he said about playing 10 conference games for everybody,
that's crazy.
That doesn't make any sense. Why would you?
Because
that doesn't mean that, the SEC's playing 10 conference games now, so we're going to honor strength of schedule.
Well, and the safeguard that Commissioner Greg Sankey and also the Big Ten, they wanted to put in place was guaranteeing those 4 spots. Now we see the reason why. Because if you leave it up to a committee of 12, or if Juracek had to excuse himself, or Gary Pinkel did because of his ties to Missouri and coaching in the SEC at one time, I don't even know. But yeah, at this point, you would like to have some of those safeguards in place. Again, though, there's so many different layers to this, guys, and it does ultimately go back to Alabama. All you had to do was handle your business. Now, I will say this: Alabama, any team that is currently in the field, I would say that Alabama could beat any of those teams on a given Saturday. But I also, and I couldn't always say this in the past, that this particular Alabama team, I would say that almost every one of those teams on any given Saturday could beat this Alabama team.
I think that's fair based on what we saw against mainly the Oklahoma game. I think that's a fair.
Oklahoma and Vanderbilt support the argument.
I think that's a fair assessment. And then, but then it comes back to the conversation of, okay, so we're rewarding teams for beating average teams and bottom feeder teams as opposed to having to actually have big wins. Because I know it's easy for us to say, but would you still not rather have a team that, yes, they've shown they can stub their toe against 6-6 teams, but they also have a win over the number 2 team in the country? Like, I feel like that's where, and there's no fair or right answer either way, but I think most common sense college football fans would look and go, let's take the team that is battle tested and has proven they can beat playoff worthy teams.
And Pat, Miami and Alabama, they have to shoulder some of the blame, especially Miami. You can't point at anybody but your own conference or yourself, really, in losing that game at Syracuse.
Well, no, correct. I mean, I agree with that 100%. And I'm not on this program to sit here and try to say that Alabama deserves to be in the playoff over anybody else. My whole problem with this process, there was no transparency. The lack of strength of schedule meant absolutely nothing to this committee. That's a problem. They had a lot of things already baked into the final weekend, and I keep bringing up Indiana. It was an absolute absurdity that not more conversation was had about Indiana being in this college football playoff. They played the bottom 10 of the Big Ten Conference. The total record of the conference opponents was 28-53. 28-53. Now, granted, they had to play the schedule that was brought in front of them. They punched their ticket with a strength of schedule of 68. 68. Now, granted, schedule more. Now, that is a team that should have scheduled more non-conference opponents instead of going to play a MAC team. Like, go get yourself a major Power 4 to play out of conference. But they just made the college football playoff by basically playing one tough game. One.
Yeah. Yes.
And they lost it.
And given where that program is, I think that even if he says that he totally expected this, Curt Cignetti, the Indiana football team, I don't think any of them expected right now to be sitting there at 11-1 when they looked at that schedule based on what they didn't have coming back and that program being left in disarray following Tom Allen in his tenure ending.
I mean, he's done a great job, and that's fine. But once again, I agree. And Greg Sankey brought it up last year. One thing does not look like the other. Okay.
Correct.
Like when you're playing in the Southeastern Conference is completely different than some of these teams in the ACC. I mean, it's just absurd. I agree with Lane Kiffin on the argument against the ACC. When you look at the SEC versus the ACC, of the 10 toughest schedules in college football, the top 5 are from SEC teams. Okay. 8 of the top 10 come from the SEC. The ACC only had 4 teams in the top 25 strength of schedule. SEC had 13. Let me repeat that. The ACC had 4 teams in the top 25 in strength of schedule. SEC had 13. The champion of the ACC, Clemson, their strength of schedule was 35.
Yeah, and Alabama and Ole Miss beat the team that just beat your conference champion in the last game of the season on the road.
Think about Clemson. Clemson loses to Georgia, and who else did they lose to? South Carolina. From what conference? The Southeastern Conference. The ACC runner-up, SMU, was 60th. So don't give me this garbage like Ward Manuel was talking about yesterday, how, strength of schedule did matter. Yeah, that's why Alabama's a 3-loss team, and they're in the conversation. Okay, if you take all the teams that are in the college football playoff, would you like to take a guess what their strength of schedule average is of the 12 teams?
18th.
Okay.
Of the 12 teams, their strength of schedule average is 47th.
Okay.
I was going to go like 30.
40. Is that not amazing? 40.
By the way, let's not forget that this Clemson team lost to Louisville by 12 points too.
Yeah, 40. So once again, the criteria based on, strength of schedule, you just throw it out the window. So we could be sitting here today talking about Ole Miss, South Carolina. I know because we're in Birmingham, Alabama, everyone thinks that we're making apologies for Alabama. Alabama did not deserve to be in because they couldn't handle their business against Oklahoma. Ole Miss is not in it because they couldn't handle their business against Kentucky. South Carolina decided about halfway through the season they were going to start playing football. Okay? But all these teams, whether it's Miami, the 3 SEC schools, or SMU, they all have warts. They all got issues. And so I know you're splitting hairs when you get to that point, but my issue with the committee is they did not honor strength of schedule, period. That was my problem with the whole process.
And the reason that we're having this discussion and we're so passionate about it, as you mentioned, it's not making the case for Alabama. It's moving forward, and we need more streamlined criteria and more transparency from this committee, and not to put it where we're guessing every single selection Sunday and wondering, is the SEC potentially going to get screwed again? And again, no transparency with the strength of schedule.
0.
How did they know that was going to be an issue, and the reason that they didn't want to make that public?
We said it on the webinar, multiple people, whether it was Mike Griffith, whether it was Barrett Salee, whether it was Jerry Palm from CBS, they all asked the same exact question in regards to the strength of schedule. Know that availability will not be made public. These are 12 data points. We're sourcing this to an outside company that is going to give us this data. We don't have access to it. So all that when I start quoting these strength of schedule, these are numbers that ESPN are actually making public. So maybe those numbers are a little bit different than what the company is providing to the committee. I don't know.
Now, if you are in the camp of you don't believe that SMU belongs, you don't believe whoever else that's there, Indiana, the thing that you would fear the most is that an IU team, they prepare for a couple of weeks, they get ready, they go and they play their butts off and they win in South Bend. An SMU team goes in as a 8.5, 10 point, whatever is underdog and Happy Valley, and they knock off Penn State, because that will tell the committee we did this right. We made the right decision. They belonged and they can play with the big boys. And whether it's not supposed to or not, that will give them justification moving forward to say, oh, but look back. Remember what happened in 2024?
Well, here's the other problem with the whole entire bracket. So I'm sitting here looking at the bracket now. So you got to love a playoff where the 12th ranked team has a first round bye.
Yep.
The team that committee said this is the 12th best team in the playoff. This team barely made it, right? Number 12. They get a first round bye. Why? Why does that team get a bye? The 3rd and 4th ranked teams don't have a bye. So number 3 play an extra game. What does that make? 11th ranked team playoff, while the 16th ranked team is in the playoff. Makes no sense whatsoever. Now, that 11th team, once again, I'm going to preface this, that could have been in Miami, okay? So I'm not sitting here yelling and screaming because Alabama didn't get in. I'm sitting here screaming that this process is flawed. It's terrible. January 20th, they're going to get together and they're going to try to obviously start the conversation to fix some of this, because there's no way on God's green earth that Boise State or Arizona State deserves a bye in this 12-team playoff.
And that doesn't even get to the point that Oregon, who is the only undefeated team, has earned the number 1 seed, and they have the most difficult path potentially to getting to a national championship game, and that's your reward for being the best team in college football.
Once again, it's just anybody that, whether your kid plays tournament basketball or travel baseball, whatever, a tournament seeding is supposed to award the higher seeds.
Yes.
And this format did not do that, period. We've got calls. We've got text. We're going to get to all of those next. But first off, the Twin Peaks Twitter poll question of the day, brought to you by Twin Peaks and Hoover.
Yeah, so if you're like me and you need something to take the edge off, it's only 10 a.m., but can't start too early on a day like this. Get on into Twin Peaks and Hoover. They're going to have everything there for you, from their 29-degree man-sized draft, their wonderful cocktail menu, their craft beer offerings, also their full-service kitchen, including those quesadilla tacos and barbecue brisket flatbreads. Go into Twin Peaks and Hoover. They're going to have plenty of screens. Catch all the games there. Enjoy yourself a nice cold beverage as well. And they sponsor our 3-man front daily Twitter poll question of the day. And Molly, I believe that our question today has to do with Kalen DeBoer and his first year in Tuscaloosa.
It does. With a 9-win season, multiple upsets, losses, and no CFP, what letter grade would you give Kalen DeBoer in his first season at Alabama? No A is an option. Only B, C, D, and F. And right now winning with 42.5% saying B, 38.2% saying C, 13.9% saying D, and 5.5% saying F.
How'd you vote?
I gave him a B. My expectation coming in was 10-2 and a trip to the playoff, and you fell just short of that. So I'll give you a B. Good job recruiting. Think made the most out of an awkward situation at times. So
we will keep you updated on the transfer portal. As of this moment, 9 Alabama players have entered the transfer portal, 11 for Auburn. So that's where we stand as of this moment. A couple of Alabama guys just went in a couple minutes ago. We'll give you the latest on that and open up the phone lines on Reaction Monday here on Jocks 94.5. Well, today officially the transfer portal is open. A brief rundown of what has happened so far. For the Alabama Crimson Tide, these are the names that we can confirm have either gone to the portal or just waiting for their paperwork to go through. Wide receiver Kendrick Law, offensive lineman Miles McVay, Caleb Odom, who had just an incredible fall. Wide receiver, where originally he was a tight end, then they moved him to wide receiver.
Very active on social media.
Yeah, his parents were pretty ticked off during the season.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was coming. Kobe Prentice, Jaheim Otis. I would think that Otis is probably going to end up with Pete Golding when it's all said and done. Keanu Coate, Jahil Hurley, Donnie Lewis, one of the backup tight ends. He is in the transfer portal. And just a few moments ago, former Hewitt-Trussville defensive lineman Hunter Osborne has just gone into the transfer portal. Meanwhile, Auburn has 11 players currently in the transfer portal. Wide receiver Caleb Burton III, Holden Garner and Hank Brown, quarterbacks. Tight end Micah Riley, offensive lineman E.J. Harris, defensive lineman Gage Keys, punter Gabe Russo, wide receiver Camden Brown, tight end Grant Hidalgo, defensive lineman T.J. Lindsley, and the safety Caleb Wooden all have entered the transfer portal. So 9 currently for Alabama, 11 for Auburn. And the good news, Conrad, is that Alabama has already plucked somebody out of the portal. That didn't take long.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about this one. This is big.
I was watching film this morning. Yes. This is really going to jazz everybody up. So Alabama got a punter out of the transfer portal. Blake Dowd, the punter.
From the Colorado School of Mines?
Did they kidnap him in the middle of the night like they did Nicholson? Does his coach know yet?
Did they steal him?
Maybe so, but yes, he is the punter for the Colorado School of Mines.
Mimes, as in Mimes?
Yes, yes, it is mimes.
Like Marcel Marceau, the French mime artist?
Yes.
Is that who we're talking about?
I think it's more of the underground.
Right now, Landrum's in a box. He's trying to get out of the box.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah,
are you pumped about that?
I guess he looked good on the film, but
so you actually went and looked at
good
film.
on the film.
Are you kidding me? You're looking at film of punters.
Hey, you know the hang time on those punts is naturally going to be better because of the altitude.
Yes, Pat and I had that conversation earlier. I think they played a dome though, Colorado School of Mines.
Do they?
Sure. So
do they turn the AC on? Is it to his back when he's punting?
This is like the Metrodome in the World Series against
the Braves? We're tearing
holes
in this kid already.
Maybe so.
Okay.
I'm looking for the stadium. Oh, they do not play in a dome.
They play in a mine.
A big one.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite pretty, though.
It is pretty. Very scenic.
The mountains in the background?
I like their logo. It's like a donkey.
Yeah.
It is. Oh. It's like
a burro?
Yeah, donkey, burro.
Is it like an Eeyore? Or is it more of like a donkey with teeth? Like
that big old teeth. Mm-hmm.
Well, don't get caught in the cold. Schedule your system checkup now from a Train comfort specialist. Train has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. Visit train.com to find a comfort specialist near you.
800-239-WJOX. Reaction Monday. Plenty of reaction to get to. First, let's go to Robert. He's in Greenville. Robert, welcome in.
Good morning. How y'all doing today?
Doing well. Hope you are.
Yeah, listen, first of all, this was a tough weekend for Alabama football. I still believe that Alabama should have been in over SMU because Alabama was 3-1 against top 25 opponents in the college football rank, top 25. SMU, on the other hand, was 0-2. Alabama's strength of schedule, I've heard, is 16 and 18. SMU, I've heard, I think ended up 58, I believe. And I just think that it's a joke that the committee did not take the strength of schedule into consideration, rewarding these teams playing these weak schedules. And I remember Pat Smith said after the webinar that this committee just seemed like they were clueless and didn't know what they were doing. Having said all that, it goes back to what you said. This is not the NBA. This is not Major League Baseball. You cannot have an off day and get away with it. And that's what happened to Alabama against Oklahoma. every game, losing by 3 touchdowns hurts. You wonder how things would have been different if Ryan Williams didn't get that ridiculous call on his touchdown. But nevertheless, I think Greg McElroy said it better than I did. I said, it's painful right now to Alabama players, fans, coaches, everyone. But use this as a learning experience, kind of like what happened in 2010 when Alabama went 10-3 and they ended up winning a couple national titles in a row, or like 2019 when Alabama won the Citrus Bowl and then won a national title during the COVID, and even 22 when they beat Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. And I think the fans need to stay supported behind DeBoer and these players and this coaching staff. Hopefully they can get some things straightened out with managing the roster through the transfer portal. They got a great recruiting class coming in. And hope be behind this team in this Quest Bowl against Michigan. I think by the closer we get the game is played, I think Bama fans will be fired up for this game. But it's disappointing. But hey, we got the basketball teams doing great. I'm proud of them going to North Carolina and winning on Wednesday night. Now I got Creighton coming in. It's a long week though because of finals, but I'm like I said, we've got a Final Four basketball team that's got a chance to do something really special this year. Just let Coach DeBoer alone. Let him run this program as he sees fit to get Alabama back to national championship promise. Just that 2024 is a transition season. It's just not meant to be our year. But the real true fans stand behind this team. I was behind them when it was 17 years when we went through the 3 blind Mike era. But it's hard. I understand that. I know there's some frustration with the committee, but hopefully they'll readjust everything January 20th when they meet in Atlanta. But it's too late as far as this season's concerned. But look, we're still going to hopefully beat Michigan, get a 10-win season, go next year with some momentum, and hopefully have a great year like I mentioned about 2020
right.
and 2023. It's a tough morning. I know. I'm a huge been a Bama fan since the Coach Bryant era. I remember watching his show as a little boy back in the 70s from Greenville, Alabama. And I'm just, it's hard. I know, but.
Thank you, Robert. We appreciate the phone call.
Thank you so much, Robert. We got a full bank of phone calls.
State of the Capstone report from Robert in Greenville.
We will get to as many phone calls as we can today. Mike Rodak at 11, Coach Bill Clark at 1. So we got plenty of time to hear from you on this Reaction Monday. Jocks 94.5. I'm going to miss those Tuesday nights with Ward Manuel. Such a very well-spoken administrator for the University of Michigan. Just got a 5-year contract extension. Wow. What a time to be alive.
Well,
when you get paid 5 more years.
You look at that athletic department, it's been squeaky clean.
I think they left Alabama out because he just really wanted Michigan to play them in a bowl game. So he wanted to help out
very much
the
so.
Wolverines.
All right, let's listen to the wisdom of Ward Manuel. This is what he had to say when he basically gave us the reason, or I guess the reason, why SMU was ranked ahead of Alabama.
Let's start first with inclusion. Alabama and SMU. We've talked about there was a significant difference in strength of schedule between the two. There was a significant difference, we assume, when we see the rest of the rankings, in number of ranked wins. How did the committee come to the balance between making sure SMU wasn't penalized or the committee wasn't punitive toward them for playing a conference championship game, as opposed to putting the appropriate value on strength of schedule?
Well, Reese, good to be with you again. And your debate on television really sums up the debate in the room. We looked at the number of wins that Alabama had against ranked opponents. We looked at SMU's schedule, and they were undefeated in conference. Their losses were to ranked teams. But we also looked at Alabama's loss to unranked teams. And it was quite a debate. I mean, we value strength of schedule. That's why Alabama, as a 3-loss team, is ranked ahead of other teams that have 2 losses. It is something that we talk about quite a bit. But in the balance of it, in the way SMU played in that game, losing on the last-second field goal, great win by Clemson, great game, we just felt that in this particular case, SMU still had the nod at 10 above Alabama. But it's no disrespect to Alabama's strength of schedule. It's merely looking at the entire body of work for both teams.
Okay. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. But I'm going to shoot a big old hole in what he just said. Because he just brought up the fact that he looked at the bad losses for Alabama. Well, those bad losses for Alabama was in the committee room on Tuesday night. So if I'm a Miami fan, I'm pissed off. Because why wasn't Miami ranked ahead of Alabama? Because granted, Miami had the 2 losses, and they should have had more, but they didn't have more. They just had the 2 losses. So why is it that those so-called bad losses only became a topic of conversation in that room on Sunday as opposed to Tuesday? Do you guys see my point?
Yeah, absolutely. We get it every year, though. If it's Ward Manuel, if it's Boo Corrigan, if it's whoever the dude was, they conveniently talk out of both sides of their mouth, and they contradict whatever they said. Sometimes 2 sentences ago, sometimes it's 2 weeks or just a week ago. But yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. And that's a big old hole in the argument.
Alabama could not improve the resume. It was baked. It was done on Tuesday. So if you're going to bring it up yesterday that we looked at Alabama's bad losses, well, why did you not look at them on Tuesday? Why was Miami behind Alabama on Tuesday, but then all of a sudden that is convenient for you to use that argument now to put Alabama behind SMU?
I mentioned that last week because, if you remember after the Oklahoma game when Ole Miss had also lost to Florida and the next rankings that came out after that, they specifically pointed out the Florida loss by Ole Miss and how that's a loss that, you just don't really expect something like that to happen. And they kind of blew over, honestly, what happened between Alabama and Oklahoma. But it always felt like maybe they're holding that in their back pocket. So when it fits the narrative that they want for that week, they can then bring it out and say, oh, well, Alabama had that 21-point loss to Oklahoma. I will also bring this up. Who do you think has a worse strength of schedule, Miami or SMU?
That would be SMU.
Exactly. So if the same argument could apply to Miami, why did it not apply to SMU
well,
yesterday?
it's they use that criteria when it's convenient, Conrad.
Well,
just
exactly.
like what you just said.
Exactly.
If it fits the narrative and what they're trying to go and to win over all of us with their explanation, that's what we get. But the committee, deep down, they wanted SMU to win that game. That would have made things a ton easier for them.
A cakewalk.
But then you started seeing the score early and thought, woo, if Clemson makes them look bad, how much is that going to weigh in the eyes of the committee? If you're reading what Ward Manuel said and talking about being impressive and losing right there at the horn on a field goal, maybe we're led to believe that had they performed very, very poorly in that game, that would have been a different decision, but we'll never know.
And then he also pointed out the fact that SMU was undefeated. No, they weren't. They lost their conference championship game. The two toughest games that they played all year long, they lost. So, I mean.
And not, again, if anybody should feel like crap today, it should be Steve Sarkisian in Texas. This Texas team that was built and had all this talent, and doesn't matter who you put in there at quarterback, and look at your schedule, and you were challenged twice. Oh, okay, Texas A&M would have been third time, but you were challenged really twice this season. And you got beat by a Georgia team that I think we would all agree is not as good as maybe 3 or 4 of Kirby's best teams.
Also, speaking of that, it's a good segue before we get back to phone calls. I do want to point this out, and it was starting to leak out kind of over the weekend that they were very concerned about Carson Beck moving forward, if he's going to be able to even participate for Georgia in the playoff. And there's some reports coming out that apparently he has a UCL elbow injury. It's a tear or damage to the ligament on the inner side of his elbow. And if that's the case, then he's done.
He's done.
Well, and you could see there's a video of him on the sideline during the game talking to one of his teammates, and he's looking at his elbow, and you can see where he clearly says, it's bad.
Was that the Spencer Strider injury?
UCL?
Yeah.
That's Tommy John's, right?
I'm not sure if Strider. I'm not sure. Possibly. But, I mean, and again, we'll have a doctor on later this week, UAB Sports Medicine. If it's just a sprain, you're looking at probably 2 or 3 weeks. I think Josh Allen had that with the Buffalo Bills last year, and I think he played through it.
But if it's torn,
Tommy
John.
That's done.
Yeah, it was a bone fragment there that damaged the right UCL for Spencer Strider.
Okay,
so similar. It's got a. Yeah, I can't imagine. We'll see. So Gunnar Stockton. Well, at least you have meaningful experience. You played in a big game. And tell you what, that guy's tough as nails. Who thought that he was dead after he got hit?
Yeah,
near the goal line.
That was a heck of a hit, but it was, for at least a little bit there, you had the narrative of, oh, is Georgia going to get FSU'd if they lose this football game? And, well, now we'll never know.
We'll continue with your phone calls, 800-239-WJOX. Let's go to Mike. He wants to talk college football playoff. Hey, Mike, welcome in.
Oh, hey there. It's interesting. I'm not really a fan of any of the schools you're talking about there, but even though my school did model the football stadium after SMU, I think that if I was an Ole Miss fan, I would want to know. I mean, they destroyed South Carolina. They dominated Georgia more than any other school, has. I don't understand, they got 3 losses. Alabama's got 3 losses, right? South Carolina's got 3 losses, all that. But, I mean, no one has manhandled Georgia like Ole Miss has. I guess it was the loss to Kentucky or Florida. I don't know what it was. Why would Ole Miss be ranked below, say, Alabama, for instance?
It was the Kentucky game. I mean, losing at home to the team.
And if you go common opponent, they lost in Baton Rouge to a team that Alabama steamrolled in Baton Rouge.
Right.
Where was it? 3 points to LSU, 3 points to Kentucky, and was it 7 or 6 to Florida? All close losses that Ole Miss had. I think, you look at the schedule for Ole Miss, they had a pretty tough schedule, but they sure dominated South Carolina. I think they beat them 35-7. They beat Georgia 27-10, I think it is.
28-10 and 27-3 in the South Carolina game.
Yeah. I mean, they dominated Georgia. They dominated South Carolina. Who else has done that? And, definitely with Georgia, nobody has dominated Georgia like that I recall in a few years.
Right. Well, and we appreciate the phone call, and that's what it comes back to is the Kentucky loss. Is that more magnified? Does that make it, or the loss to a Florida team that actually got better as the season progressed? Does that outweigh your shiny wins? And that would have been the very impressive home game that you had against Georgia, and you won that game convincingly.
And let's also point out the fact that I know that I was slamming Indiana earlier. Texas had no top 25 wins either.
Yeah, and that's why we're being fair, and I bring up Texas, and if anybody should just be kicking themselves, but they're still in the college football playoff. They still get a chance to serve, hold serve at home as they welcome in a Clemson team that they should beat. But maybe we get more chaos in the playoffs, and it justifies Ward Manuel and the other committee members. I would love to be a fly on the wall to listen to what Hunter Yurachek had to say as he came back into the room.
But just to make sure we're all on the same page here, 25% of the football or the playoff bracket does not have a win over a top 25 team.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what college football is needed, Conrad.
That's right. That's right.
More calls coming up next, but I want to tell you about Golston Tree Service. We've had some rain come through here over the last 24 hours. It's going to be wet around here for the next couple of days, and Golston Tree Service can help you out immediately. They have that 24-hour emergency storm service at 205-337-4018. Whether it's trimming the hedges or shaping the trees, or if you need multiple trees cut down in your yard and the stump grinded and ripped out and taken away, they can take care of all that at Golston Tree Service at 205-337-4018. I've been a customer of Golston for years. They've got a licensed arborist that runs the company. He's on site. He will give you an honest assessment of what's going on your property, or if something is dying, or what they can do to save it. If you need it taken out, they can do that as well. Golston Tree Service, 205-337-4018. More of your calls on this Reaction Monday. This is Jocks 94.5.
Reaction Monday. We'll get to your phone calls. Yes, we will get to your text. The text line is open, 205-834-9450. We had one of our listeners in the state of Oklahoma listening on the app saying, hey, not all of us can call in. That's fine. We will get to your text and a slew of those texts as well. Tell you about Mandu in downtown Homewood. It's electrical muscle stimulation fitness. They're going to put you in a suit, hook you up to a machine that sends electric pulses to various parts of your body. If you're adding muscle, if you just want to overall feel better, maybe you're building up endurance, tailor-made plans, whatever level of previous workout experience you have, they can take you through it. They can walk you through it. 15 minutes, that's all it takes. Because of the technology and really, really smart people coming up with this, it's boutique fitness. You're going to get results, but it's only 15 minutes out of your day. And right now, in the month of December, if you sign up with Mandu, you're going to get 50% off of your first month membership. Just state Trump 2024 when you call Paul and the gang at Mandu, MANDUU.com. Mandu in downtown Homewood. Make sure you tell them Landrum from Jox 94.5 sent you.
1-800-239-WJOX, the Courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450. Mike Rodak will join us at the top of the hour.
Let's go to David. He wants to talk college football playoff. Hey, David, welcome in. David.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
I can't disagree with you all on the top end and the bottom end because obviously the playoff committee, there's a lot of problems there, and we all know that. But I am curious, I haven't heard you talk much about is some of these teams that are in the middle of the playoffs, in the bracket, and particularly Ohio State and Tennessee. If we're going by the perception that, okay, it's win-loss, strength of schedule doesn't have a lot to do with it, and you see these two teams, I'm curious how Ohio State gets the home field versus Tennessee. When you look at the strength of schedule, there's not a hair follicle difference.
Yeah, Ohio State's 27 and Tennessee's 30.
Okay, I looked at that percentage column, and they're basically the same. So, they lost to a Michigan and they lost to Oregon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you got Tennessee, who had a bad loss like Ohio State to Michigan against Arkansas, and they lost to Georgia, who at the time was number 2 in the country. So I'm just curious, how do you think they determine the home field selection there?
In my personal opinion, I think that they had baked in the Big Ten, Ohio State and Indiana and Penn State. They had all worked those three into a situation where at least 3 of those teams possibly was going to get home field advantage. I think that's the way that they set it up from the get-go. Oregon obviously ran the table, and they were going to get a bye automatically. But in regards to the other teams, I think that they were going to protect Penn State and Ohio State at all regards.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that it's a name recognition power. Ohio State, Tennessee's not been there in a while, so I can get that. But they were basically neck and neck, and they did not move or change in the 8-9 spot there for the last couple of weeks. So the other question I've got real quick is how are they going to determine the officiating crew in these games? Will it be Big Ten like Ohio State, or a mix, or how are they going to determine that? Do you know?
I do not. Thank you, David. Now, historically, when you get to the college football playoff, when it was just a 4-team, obviously they would have a conference that is not a participant in that particular game. So with the Tennessee-Ohio State game, then let's say that they bring in a Big 12 crew or an ACC crew. That's what I would assume that's what would happen. Now, if it's a regular season non-conference games, a lot of time, whoever the visiting team is they bring that conference's officials with them for that game. But then sometimes they do use the home officiating crew in regards to the conference. But I think for this, you will not see a Big Ten or an SEC crew.
And we got time for one more. Let's go to Greg. He's in Russellville. Hey, Greg, what's up?
Good morning, man. First of all, I just wanted to say, Landrum, you did a great job on the Super 7.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that.
Some good ball games.
For sure.
But anyway, what I was going to call as far as the playoff, I'm the biggest Alabama fan there is, but I'm not concerned that we're not in. You can debate it all day long, but if I'm turning off the Oklahoma game at halftime, I mean, we don't deserve to be in the playoff. Now, there's teams in the playoff. I think it's watered down pretty bad. For the first time especially. But I was going to ask you this. What if they put stipulations? I had two questions. The first one is, what if they put stipulations on this thing now where, take like Indiana, if you don't play a team outside of your conference that's, say, a 30 strength of schedule or something like that. I mean, somebody from another conference, the ACC or somebody like that, it's got to be one of the top conferences you got to play a game against. For instance, like Arizona scheduled Mississippi State, and I'm sure when they scheduled Mississippi State, that's back when, Mississippi State was having good years, with Leach.
Right.
But they at least they did, and I will give Boise, they did play Oregon. But, as far as the rest of these teams, though, I hate to use the reference high school teams, but that's kind of what they played.
It is 11 o'clock, hour number 2 of Reaction Monday after the college football playoff announcement. The transfer portal officially opened up today. We've got tons of Alabama and Auburn players that have entered the transfer portal. Currently, Alabama's got 10 players in the transfer portal. Auburn's got 11 this morning. 3 Alabama players officially within the last hour or so. Danny Lewis, a backup tight end. Hunter Osborne from Hewitt-Trussville, a defensive lineman. He has entered the portal. And also now offensive lineman Naquil Bertram. He has entered into the portal. Maybe some of these are not household names to a lot of people, but it is about depth. So currently the count we have is Alabama with 10 players in the transfer portal. Auburn has 11. Let's get some reaction from the Alabama side of things as a disappointing season continued with the announcement yesterday that Alabama will not be playing in the college football playoff. Mike Rodak joins us from Bama 247. Mike, not that it was a big shock to many of us watching the end of that SMU game. We kind of saw the writing on the wall, but just your thoughts on what took place yesterday with the official announcement.
Yeah, I agree. Not shocking once the result happened. I think we saw that pretty quickly with the betting odds and the predictions and, just kind of some behind the scenes word of what might happen. And yeah, that was pretty expected yesterday morning. Doesn't necessarily make it right. I don't know if there's a right answer for the committee in any year because college football is so uneven. And you're trying to compare apples to oranges to all sorts of other fruits. And there's inherent problems that I think exist within college football that have to get fixed before you can even try to fix the committee or a playoff system or a bowl system, whatever you want to have. I think there's deeper issues there that need to be looked at. So, SMU played an easier schedule. They won undefeated in the ACC, as Ward Manuel said, played a really tight conference championship game, 13th game. And I think there's reasons to have them in. I think there would have been reasons to have Alabama in. I think there would have been reasons to have Ole Miss in, to be honest. But again, it's not perfect. And whoever thought going to 12 would eliminate any problems, I think obviously was a little bit naive because obviously there's still a lot of controversy at 12 like there was with 4.
Mike, on our 3-man front Twitter poll question of the day, we ask, during a 9-win season, multiple upset losses, no college football playoff, what letter grade would you give Kalen DeBoer for his first season? B, C, D, or F were the options that our listeners have. How would you grade this season?
B. B minus, I think, is probably where I would land. And I think there's obviously a lot of circumstances, and he kind of referenced this, later in the year, and I think he maybe even last night that, they were kind of behind the 8 ball, obviously coming in as a new staff, and you're hiring people, and you're trying to get everything together in terms of your portal and the staff and your system. There's a lot of new assistant coaches on this staff, so you're trying to teach them the system, and you had some younger players, but this was still a fairly veteran team. When you look at guys like Jalen Milroe, who's been around 4 years, and the defense had a lot of veterans. So I don't know if a young team was really the way to describe it, but certainly some newness. And I think that all has to be factored in. I think there's a different style of his coaching that obviously is much different than Nick Saban. It's different from other coaches and a little bit more relaxed. There's never any alarm. It's a very even keeled style, and there's probably pros and cons to that. And I think, maybe we saw some of that take place with the losses that they had, and, were they treating those games the right way, those weeks during those games, whatever the case may be? Were they, prepared? Were they outcoached? Like, what exactly happened in those 2 major losses that they had? That's obviously where his grade gets docked. And, I think this team was capable of being better than what it was. And so that's why, I want to even consider giving him an A for this season, but I also don't think he's worthy of a C or a D grade.
All right, it's a 2-part question on Jalen Milroe. Question number 1, will he play in the bowl game? 2, will he be back next year at the University of Alabama?
I would say yes and no. I think we've talked to Jalen for a few years now. Everything about him screams that he will want to play in a game like this. I don't see him as a guy that would willingly opt out. Now, would there be people saying to him, there's sense in doing so? There might be. It's a different situation than Bryce Young because, Bryce was probably guaranteed to be the first overall pick or pretty close to it. Jalen Milroe still has something to prove as far as the draft. So it's a little bit different than 2 years ago. But I would imagine there's probably some amount of insurance that would have to come into play with any high draft pick, probably more so for a guy like Tyler Booker or Jahad Campbell. But, insurance policies are something that schools will do, for games like this. And, I think he's a player that wants to be out there with his teammates, wants to be a captain. And this is just me theorizing, but would it make sense for Kalen DeBoer to acknowledge all of that, to have Jalen Milroe out there for the first drive, the first couple drives, and then kind of give him that symbolic nod out? Have Ty Simpson run onto the field, give him a big hug, just like, Jalen did to Bryce in the Sugar Bowl, and kind of pass the torch. Because to answer your second question, I just don't see him coming back. I think the story has always seemed to trend towards him going into the draft and not playing a fifth year, and just kind of seeing where that draft process leads him. I don't know if playing a fifth year is going to reveal anything new about who he is as a quarterback. I think it's, the book's out on him, and it's just a matter of, which NFL team picks him at this point.
Where from the people you're talking to, Mike, would he stack up? What kind of draft grade? And I know that it can always change, especially around draft time, but how is he viewed compared to some of the other top quarterbacks if he chooses to go into the draft with this draft class?
Yeah, early in the season, I had reached out to a couple, higher ranking NFL guys, and they were kind of in the day two range with him. I think one of them even mentioned maybe, like fourth round, but there's other people that might see him as potentially a first round pick, and you never really know, how high exactly a guy might rise. Obviously, he's going to go to the combine and put up some big numbers, and that's going to attract some people. But it was a GM that I talked to basically said, that the pre-draft process is going to be big for him, because I think teams do want to see him on the board, as they like to say, in terms of processing defenses and that part of being a quarterback and being a passing quarterback in the NFL requires a lot, and not just taking off and running if your first read is not there. So, that worked for him a lot at Alabama. It's not going to work in the NFL, and I think that part of it's going to be a question mark for him. So, if you had to ask me right now, I'd say he's probably a second round pick, but there's a range on him. He could be first, he could go later than the second. I'm not exactly sure right now.
All right, so the transfer portal officially opened up today. Last year on day one, there were 530 FBS entrants. As of 11 o'clock, right before you started this interview, that number had already reached 551. So 21 more people have already gone into the portal, and it's lunchtime than the entire first day of the portal. I set this question up by giving you those stats because as of right now, unofficially, it looks like Alabama's got about 10 people that have said that, hey, we're heading into the transfer portal. Their paperwork is being filed now, whatever the case may be. Do you anticipate this to be a more inflated number than the last year before Nick Saban decided to retire? Because obviously we had a ton of folks leave last year when he retired because they had that 30-day window. Do you anticipate this to be a more active time both ways, guys leaving and Alabama grabbing guys out of the portal than we've seen in the past?
Yeah, and people forget there was a lot of guys that went into the portal before Saban left last year. They had a couple in December after the SEC championship. I think they were up to like 17, I want to say was the number, before Saban retired, and I think it was 10 after that. So I could see it being in that 17 range again, 15 to 17. Again, you don't know exactly what it's going to be. Even Kalen DeBoer has kind of referenced it lately. Like, you think you have an idea, but you're not sure exactly. There could be some surprises. There could be a guy that walks into your office and says, "I'm leaving," and nobody saw it coming. That's possible this time of year. So to figure out exactly where that number is going to land, we'll have to see. I think it's obviously, like you said, already in double digits. I would expect more. And, it's just a question of how deep does it cut in terms of bigger names? Because right now it's some backup, the backup tight end, Danny Lewis, and some guys that maybe weren't really playing a whole lot. But if you lose a guy that was playing and was in your plans for next year, then that obviously requires you to go out and kind of scramble and find somebody in the portal to replace him, which is what they had to do last year in the case of a Caleb Downs or Trey Amos or Isaiah Bond. So to be determined. It's a crazy time of year, and some things can kind of come out of nowhere and surprise you. So we'll have to see what happens.
On that note, wide receivers, Alabama currently with 3, Kendrick Law, Caleb Odom, and also Kobe Prentice. Your thoughts, any of those surprises to you? And did you think that any of them caught Alabama based on what you just said about tight ends and other positions and future plans for those guys? How integral were they going to be in Kalen DeBoer's plan moving forward?
Yeah, I think Prentice and Law were very much expected. I tend to doubt that surprised Alabama at all. Those are two guys that this is their last year of eligibility. This is their last chance, and they would be gambling essentially if they wanted to come back for the senior year, that they would get a bigger opportunity than what they got last year, because their opportunity was not robust this year. Their production went down for both of them. It's obviously an offense that really, towards the end of the year, was focused on a run and the quarterback run, 105th in the country in passes per game this year. And that's not Caleb DeBoer's offense. He was one of the most prolific passing offenses in the country a year ago with Washington, 12th in the country in pass attempts per game. That wasn't there this year. You can probably try to sell guys on it being there next year. And that's where I thought Odom was a little bit more surprising, because he has more runway left just being a freshman this year. And probably, could have been their third receiver next year, third or fourth receiver. So that's kind of the role that he was by the end of this year. So that was more surprising. But again, it's the environment of a freshman comes in and certainly has a lot of expectations and a lot of self-confidence, and it doesn't pan out on the field. We saw that retweet or whatever it was after the Tennessee game when Caleb Odom seemed to be expressing some frustration with not getting targeted in the red zone. And then this kind of plays out where a guy thinks he might have a better opportunity to get those catches and those targets somewhere else.
In regards to Alabama looking into the portal, there's no secret that the defensive line, the interior, did not perform very well. I think the final number, I think they were 11th in regards to pressures and tackles for loss in the SEC, and that's an area that they need to improve on. Is that going to be one of the main position groups, in your opinion, that Alabama will go shopping heavily on?
Yeah, although I still question if it will be as heavy as we think they should do, because, I think there's been a certain amount of confidence in what they've had in the defensive line, maybe more than what the public might think. But yeah, if you lose Tim Keenan, I think that's part of the linchpin there. If Keenan comes back for a fifth year, then you have him, you have James Smith, you probably have Damon Payne coming back for a fifth year, and I think they like all those guys. And then it becomes a little bit harder to sell a transfer on coming in and getting a lot of playing time right away. If Keenan's not here, then I think you have a pretty immediate need. And then you also have the situation at Bandit, where you're losing Latham, fifth-year guy, and then it's a question of what does LT Overton do, because his draft stock has been all over the map. There's people who think he's a mid-first-round pick. There's people who think he's a lot less than that. And what does he do? And if you don't get him back, I think you have a real need for a Bandit type of player, which I think Kelby Collins, the Florida player from Gardendale, just went into the portal, is probably one of the bigger targets there that you'd look out for. But it's, again, I think they like some of what they have there, so I don't think it's going to be a huge portal haul, but I agree. You need a better defensive line. You need a more disruptive defensive line, and their recruiting class did not really bring that, so you're going to have to do it through the portal.
I want to circle back before we let you go, Mike, about the college football playoff. You're going to have the commissioners. You're going to have the presidents. They're going to meet on January the 20th, the morning of the national championship game, and they're going to talk about this college football playoff, year number 1 with the expanded playoff. There's no secret. Greg Sankey was furious over the weekend. He's not happy by the fact that the SEC and the strength of schedule was just completely ignored by this playoff committee. With all that being said, do you believe that this is pretty much a nail in the coffin for those that want a 9-game SEC conference schedule? Because it makes no sense why anybody would vote for that based on the fact that they're not respecting you playing 8 games and the strength of schedules not being heralded there inside that room.
In the short term, yes. I think it makes it very unlikely that they would go to 9 games on top of the issue of the TV money and what ESPN paid for that. In the long term, though, what Nick Saban said about play more games, I think it still has to be the solution, because look, this is a standoff, and the SEC and the Big Ten are either going to have to leverage the other conferences into a playoff system that benefits the SEC and Big Ten more, which they tried to do last year with 3 automatic bids for each of the SEC and Big Ten. That didn't really work. Or they're just going to have to say, we're out and we're going to do our own thing. And the rest of you guys can go figure it out and try to get money from somebody for whatever playoff system you want to make. So there's a fracture point there, but there's also a potential negotiation point. If you have that threat of basically going nuclear, can you get those other conferences to agree to something that's inherently unequal to reflect an inherently unequal system, that you have 2 conferences that are certainly better than the rest of college football. So again, I think there's deep issues here that go well beyond the playoff, and it all still speaks to me to a long-term super league, whatever you want to call it, of fewer teams. And that's something else that Saban was talking about on TV, where you just acknowledge that there's differences and teams can't afford certain players at lower levels and what they can at the top. And you have the best teams play each other, but play each other more, and basically create a mini NFL. And then you have a central standardized schedule. You have standings that lead to playoffs. You don't have a committee. That's the ultimate solution. But again, it kind of requires a bigger excavation to get there.
Well, the bad news is that Alabama's going to be playing in Tampa on December 27th. The good news, if you're covering the game, it's going to be sunny and 70 degrees, according to my 30-day outlook. So
it's 30-day.
You got that to look forward to, Mike.
I can't wait. I'll be down there for all of about 36 hours. So
it's a fun time.
Hey, are you going to get lucky and get the direct flight again? I mean, you've had the unbelievable luck this year of the direct flights.
I did. I didn't schedule that for this. There's fewer flights around New Year's Eve, and I had some flight credits to use on Delta. So
change it up. Take a bus.
Hey, now wait a second. You mean to tell me the airlines in Birmingham have not added 3 or 4 charter planes for the ReliaQuest Bowl coming out of Birmingham?
I don't think. Are they even aware? Yeah, It's interesting because the Citrus Bowl passed on Alabama. I think the only reason was they probably thought Alabama fans wouldn't show up. I mean, that's the only reason you pass on Alabama for South Carolina.
But there's a lot more to do in Orlando than Tampa,
Well,
right. I still would doubt how many fans.
More family fun in Orlando than there is in Tampa.
Yeah, Bama's about 11.5 point favorite right now, Mike? I think that's right. Over Michigan?
That's what it looks like, yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it's just you can't – it's hard. These bowl games need to go away.
They really do.
My underlying take.
How would you like to be a bowl director trying to try to sell that to the public and try to sell ticket packages even on the campuses of Michigan? Now, Michigan, it makes sense because you're like, hey, go somewhere warm. Let me get out of this cold, frigid, Arctic world that we live in up north, as opposed to why would anybody in Tuscaloosa want to go to Tampa, Florida, go watch a football game?
Yeah, I mean, imagine getting the emails about, we can give you all this practice video and video from the amusement park visits. Like, players don't want to do that stuff anymore.
No.
I think there was a time and place for that historically. I think it's kind of jumped the shark, this whole 1-week bowl experience. I think players have the money to go and do what they want to do, go to the beach or whatever. And some of this kind of forced fun, if you will, is, I don't think as well received as it once was.
No,
and you just said it best, Mike. I mean, if you're a player and you've got a good NIL, you can rent out an amusement park, like for you and your friends. I mean, why do you need to go and for the obligatory B-roll shot that you see coming in from a commercial break on ESPN?
it's a relic of college football past that I think needs to go away. I also think will go away at a certain point here.
Do you have the option to opt out of some of these team events, like the wing eating competition? Do you have to go and cheer on your offensive line teammate, or can you just
I
go?
tend to think that they're required. I mean, the Rose Bowl, they had all those events they had to go to, and
Oh yeah,
I
the
mean,
famous
there's
steakhouse,
no more
right?
powerful person.
Yeah.
You're right. There's no more powerful person in college football than Nick Saban, and he was there. So I think it's all in the contract. And I don't know there was fines. Like even if we weren't at practice long enough at the Rose Bowl, if we were there for 10 minutes instead of 12 minutes as required, the Rose Bowl could fine Alabama for that. So I think once you sign up for the bowl, you sign up for everything that comes along with it.
You know, and a little behind the scenes insider, because you probably got the same email I got. I found it interesting that the ReliaQuest has absolutely hired an outside source to handle the media. Do you remember reading that? The email that we got?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, that email. I'm like, I just don't know who wants that.
Yeah. And on top of that,
Michigan or Alabama,
they're supposed to have B-roll of the contract signing. Did you notice that part in the email?
I saw that as well. Again, I don't get the purpose of that.
So they're going to have B-roll of like someone from Alabama and someone from Michigan signing the paperwork to be official combatants of the ReliaQuest Bowl. I mean, is that what we're doing? I mean, I'm like you. I mean, listen, Mike.
Palace of Versailles.
I know it's just I don't understand what's going on here. It's just a mess. But hopefully your 36 hours in Tampa will be a wonderful time.
Enjoy that time.
Yes.
Jumped the shark is my headline there.
All right, Mike. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You got it, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike Rodak joining us. All of our guests join us on the Buyers Right Hotline for all your insurance, financial, and HR needs. It's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner.
There are a lot of roofing companies out there. If you have the experience and the true desire to take care of you, like my good friends at Abide Roofing took care of me. 205-922-7134. Travis Lloyd, he's the guy you want to speak to. I 100% recommend him. He put a new roof on my home a few years back. He jumped through all the hoops of insurance company and took care of me just when I thought that they were going to deny it, my insurance company, because of Travis and Abide Roofing. They came through for me. His team at Abide Roofing, tons of experience and industry knowledge, best products that they're going to put on your home, stellar communication throughout the whole process. Do what they say when they say they're going to do it. I know they're going to take care of you because Travis and his team took care of me. Licensed, bonded, insured, just a true pro in the industry. Get your free roof inspection today by calling 205-922-7134. That's abideroof.com.
Your reaction, both on the phone lines and the texts. We'll continue three-man front this Reaction Monday. Jackson 845. 11:26, three-man front reaction Monday. Phone calls and texts. Alabama missing out on the college football playoff. A lot of discussion about the college football playoff, the criteria, and moving forward. 800-239-WJOX. Always tell you about our friends at Mystic Beverage right there in Blount County, Alabama. It's sparkling water infused with various cannabinoids for relaxation and focus. The Lift Blend, that's my favorite. It features CBD, CBG, Delta-9, and green coffee bean extract that boosts both body and mind. If you need to pick me up during the day, you want to get focused, you can certainly do it with the Lift Blend. The High Hills Delta-9, available in the 5 milligram and 15 milligram for a balanced and elevated vibe. The Nirvanic 25 milligram Delta-8. It's a smooth, calming experience, perfect for unwinding. Mystic Beverage, Blount County, Alabama. Ask for it, and they should have it at your local Piggly Wiggly store. If they don't, make sure you ask for it. MysticBeverage.com for more information. We'll continue with your phone calls and your texts. Let's go to Trip in Florida. Hey, Trip.
Hey, listen, I listen on the app in Florida. Hey, listen, I'm going to be really quick. So Ward Manuel said that SMU is 8-0 in the conference. Okay, well, that conference, their whole committee put them as the 5th best conference. So I don't get it. That was he should not have said that. But bottom line is everybody in the SEC has lost 2 games to SEC teams. So yeah, I mean I know Texas lost to Georgia twice. So, but dang, I mean, that was not a good thing to say there. So they took the easy pass. So
no question.
Comments.
No,
they did.
No doubt.
No, thank you, Trip. No, and woulda, shoulda, coulda. Could have been different, but their job got easier in trying to justify it, whether we like it or not. We're never going to agree. 12 teams, 16 teams, maybe that helps alleviate some of it. Why not just push it to 24? Do you believe, though, Pat, after this, and obviously you have the SEC and they're upset about this. Greg Sankey is not happy. And when Greg Byrne comes out and he makes a public statement that he does yesterday, do you believe we get an expanded field now?
I don't think you're going to get an expanded field until 2 years from now, but I do believe that they're going to tweak this business where you're not going to have the ability, and I brought this up earlier, where you have a playoff that has been set where the 12th ranked team has a first round bye. Arizona State has played very good football down the stretch, but they have no business to have a bye over a team like a Texas or a Tennessee. I mean, they just don't. And you have the 3rd and 4th ranked teams that don't have a bye. I think those type of things are going to be the things that's going to be corrected. Now you're going to have the group of 5. You're going to have the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference, and you're going to have your Mark and all these people. They're going to be kicking and screaming. But at the end of the day, I'm just really not sure why the Big Ten and the SEC agreed to the format that we just saw that was unveiled yesterday.
Because it took so long for everyone to agree.
Well, I understand
I think it got to the point where it was, damn it, all right, let's just go ahead and get these first 2 years passed, and then we can dissect it. Doesn't make it right.
But a 16th ranked team, according to the committee,
right,
is in a 12-team playoff. That's absurd.
It is.
Sorry, Clemson. But once again, Clemson did what was necessary for them to get into the big dance. I get that. But why? I like what Mike Rodak said. At the end of the day, they need to figure this stuff out to where the standings are going to be able to put you into the playoff and you don't have to deal with a committee. How many committees really work in life, period? Talking about politics, talking about a college football playoff committee, whatever committee you want to have. How many of those committees actually do the work and they do something that is positive?
I mean, I know they're out there. I just can't think of any right off the top of my head.
I'm sure there's 1 or 2 somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's committees that put together like holiday parades for the most part. They might have some bickering back and forth.
Church committees.
Yeah, church committees.
Yeah, they're
fine people.
Absolutely. But when you talk about the level of money involved, each team that makes the college football playoff gets $4 million. $4 million. You think that $4 million would have helped the University of Alabama out?
Yeah. Now, it would have helped other schools. Probably more than Alabama. But yeah,
and I know
take
I'm
the $4 million.
People are tired of hearing me say it, but I came on this program in October after that webinar in my office, and I told y'all, I was just shaking my head, and y'all were like going, what's going on? I said, this is going to be a disaster.
You know what? I blame you. I blame Barrett Slee, and I blame Mike Griffith. Y'all should have not gotten off that webinar.
Y'all going to change this right now.
You should have told General Clark, look. You invited us on here. You wanted us to be your sounding board. This is terrible.
One more thing that I'm going to throw out here that it's so ironic. So apparently for the first time ever, there was a leak yesterday in regards to the final playoff spot. I don't know if you saw this, but about 30 minutes before they unveiled that it was SMU over Alabama, Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, he tweeted out, sources are telling the Action Network that SMU is in, Alabama is out. That is the first time, Landrum, since the invention of the college football playoff back in 2014, that somebody leaked something out prior to the final unveiling. I also find it ironic that all those years that Bill Hancock was in charge, that never happened. Now, the first year that you have someone with a military background who is over the college football playoff, and you now have a leak.
Oh, great. On Texas. SMU. Maybe they had a plan in there. Maybe they bugged the room. But yeah, you're right, because then it became SMU minus whatever, and then it was Bama plus a crazy number.
Then it was all taken off the board.
And then they quickly took them off the board.
Yeah.
And I know that because I personally went in.
And I was watching it too. Because just like
grab some easy money.
Last Tuesday night, I mean, we're sitting there looking at the betting handles, and it was overwhelmingly Bama over Miami for the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night. And then yesterday morning, I mean, that shot up like minus 1,000 for SMU within a couple hours. But I just find that ironic how, again, you have someone that was a general in the military is now over the college football playoff, and we had a leak. And you had Bill Hancock, who ran it for 10 years and never had a problem. All right, more of your calls, your texts as well. This is Reaction Monday on Jocks 94.5. It is Reaction Monday here on Three Man Front. College football playoff was announced yesterday. Alabama is out. 3 SEC teams did make it. Georgia, some bad news. It appears not anything official yet, but all indications are out of Athens, Georgia, is that Carson Beck is going to be lost for the playoffs due to an issue with his UCL. So we will get more information, obviously, tomorrow with Mike Griffith from DogNation.com. I want to tell everybody about 18 South. It's the premium men's and ladies store that, for those folks that want a modern look without sacrificing comfort, popular brands like Grayson, Mizzen and Main, Roan and Linksole wear the same gear that us here at Jocks wear. Jocks crew loves their 18 South gear. Quarter zips, polos, pants, and more. 18 South has a look for every guy and gal for any occasion. Look great whether it's the office, gym, or the golf course. Premium modern style at 18 South. They got the store location there in Trussville next to Petco. They also here in Homewood, brand new store at the new Edge Shopping Center. That's 819 Green Springs Highway, Suite 105 in Homewood. Or you can go online and check out all their fantastic gear. Landrum's got one of their super nice quarter zips on right now. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Looks fantastic. 819 Green Springs Highway, Suite 105 in Homewood, or online, spell out 18-south.com. That's 18-south.com.
Phone calls and text Reaction Monday. BB, welcome in. Happy Monday. Or is it a happy Monday for you?
Well, the bloom is definitely off the rose, but, if they hadn't stunk it up in Oklahoma, we would be singing a different song.
No
Very
doubt.
true.
So you get what you get. But my concern is this committee. So I don't know how many people are on this thing, but it looks
13.
like a damn room full.
13.
Okay, we got 13. We got 13 people. We let them go out and play in this sandbox. And I'm sure that a handful of them done messed up and dropped something in that sandbox. And now we got to go back and clean up that sandbox. And a lot of it, to me, is all of this, I think, is, I concur with everything that you say about the committee so far. But, Pat, you teed it up for me. Committees don't work. Committees, I have seen some real hate on church committees. So I'm just telling you, it's not an easy thing to get consensus anywhere because you have too many egos working against you. And I'm telling you, I would love to be a fly on the wall when the Big Ten and the SEC meet up in at the championship game. And my question, and I'll hang up and listen to this, you may have already covered this, but I'm unclear on it. Is there room? Do we have to have these same people? Is there room for movement? Do they have to opt out for somebody else to get in? What kind of control does anybody have over this committee?
It is a rotational basis, BB. Like, for instance, Ward Manuel, this is his 3rd year on the committee. This was his 1st year as the chairperson of the committee. I believe this is a 3-year commitment, and then they rotate new people on and off.
Okay. So do they rotate some people 1 year so they're kind of overlapping rotations?
Yes, there is. So you're not talking about, okay, well, 8 of the 13 are off. They kind of balance it out. And everyone that's on the committee has to be approved by the conference commissioners. So this is not like, it's not like General Clark said, hey, let me call Conrad Van Order and see if Conrad in Birmingham wants to be on this committee. This has to be a recommendation. The commissioners have to
So
okay
I'm not
it.
going to be on the committee.
No,
next
you're
year.
not. Greg Sankey does not like you.
But BB, to your point, committees, and it's kind of like a jury. You might have dissension. You might have someone with another view saying, hey, we got to look at Alabama again, not agreeing with strength of schedule. But then it becomes just a, who's going to throw up the white flag? Who is tired of sitting in that room first? That usually throws it up and says, you know what, to hell with this. You guys and girls just do what you want to do.
This is what brings up my last point. I think there should be a law that everyone in that committee room, every one of those people needs to be deposed, and they do not get to plead the Fifth Amendment. I think we need to know this transparency thing. It's got to be there. It has to be there.
Great.
Anyway,
That's a
my
great
thought
point,
for the day.
BB. No, that's a great point. And listen, when I was on that webinar, the number one topic of discussion was transparency, and we didn't get it. And until we get it, all these questions that you're talking about, these people need to answer the tough questions, because their spokesperson, which is Ward Manuel, absolutely threw up on himself every Tuesday, and he threw up on himself
God.
again yesterday afternoon. Made no sense.
I would volunteer for spokesperson. I really would. But my last word is clean up your damn sandbox.
There you
know?
go. Thank you, BB. Appreciate it very much. Uh-oh.
Oh!
Whoa!
Oh!
What is going on this Monday?
Oh, I think we know what time of year it is. Things are heating up. That sound means there's breaking news here on the show. And for more, we send it to Conrad Van Order, who parted his hair and might be wearing socks today. Conrad.
Thank you, Landrum. Thank you, Pat. Big news to report at this hour. We have a double feature here in the quarterback market of the transfer portal. So, as we know, Jackson Arnold, the former Oklahoma Sooner quarterback, he entered the portal last week, was quickly tied to Auburn as well as Mississippi State and Georgia. According to Pete Nakos with On3 Sports, Mississippi State looks like they will be earning the services of one Jackson Arnold. He has put in a prediction for Jackson Arnold to transfer to Mississippi State.
Woo!
But Auburn fans, before you get all worried, Auburn
They got him a
also looks
quarterback?
like they have found themselves a quarterback.
Brace yourself,
in
Auburn
the
fans.
transfer portal. A household name from the West Coast, Ashton Daniels, the Stanford quarterback.
The pride of Buford, Georgia, Conrad.
He has a 4.78 something GPA, I'm sure.
And he's fast.
That's right.
And he did have his career standout game versus Louisville this year.
That is true. But yes, Ashton Daniels, the Stanford quarterback, it is predicted that he will land at Auburn. He had 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions this past season for the Cardinal.
And also,
really fast.
Earlier there was a prediction about UAB quarterback Jacob Zeno and where he was going to end up. Conrad, where does it look like he is heading?
It looks like he will be heading down to join the Mary Milkmen of College Station and the Texas A&M Aggies.
Zeno's not into that. I'll just go ahead and tell you.
Well, he better learn quick.
Well, I'm telling you, Jacob is an outstanding young man, and wish nothing but the best for him.
He'll get paid, man.
I mean, he's a heck of an athlete, heck of a young person, and he's going back to his native Texas, started out at Baylor.
Yep.
And so good for him that he's going to get an opportunity. Not sure if obviously he's going to be a backup, but still going home and getting paid probably to be an SEC backup quarterback. Not bad.
No.
Quarterback wheels are moving.
No doubt. More
Portal's
calls.
been open for 11 hours.
Clean up your sandbox, people.
Yes. That is the mantra from BB. Clean it up. All right. More of your calls and texts. This is 3 Man Front on Jocks 94.5. It is 11:50, Jocks 94.5. We are open until 1 o'clock, so we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-239-WJOX. Whether your family rolls with the Tide or the Yale War Eagle, there's only one place to shop, and that's Bama Fever Tiger Pride. They have a fresh stock of sweatshirts, jackets, quarter zips, and vests, as well as your everyday items like T-shirts, hats, polos, and tailgate gear. I was in Bama Fever Tiger Pride there in Trussville over the weekend, taking a look at some potential Christmas gifts, and their shelves, their hangers are just absolutely filled with the very best in merchandise. So Bama Fever Tiger Pride, they invite you to visit one of their 9 locations around the state of Alabama, and they appreciate the 40 years of patronage to their stores. Bama Fever Tiger Pride. Get by there for all your latest Alabama and Auburn gear.
Let's go to Jerry. He wants to talk college football playoff. Hey, Jerry. Jerry?
Hey, guys. Just a couple quick questions and comments. Appreciate you guys and what you do. Just one aspect. I like the idea of more, maybe going to 14 or 16. I don't know what the numbers work out as far as the bracket goes for number of teams we can have enter in the playoffs. Could 14 or 16 work? I think once you get past 16, you probably start to get pretty watered down, but it's pretty debatable in the top, at least the top 12 is pretty debatable. So thinking 14 or 16. And then the other thing is, 99.9% of all coaches that get on the radio or get on the TV after the game, are going to blame everything on themselves or they're just not going to make excuses. And, to be honest, you may be in a day and a time where your excuses may mean a lot, to go ahead and tell them. I know we lost a star linebacker in that, the second half. We were down by 7 in Oklahoma, lost a star linebacker in the second half with Lawson, our middle linebacker. And, you kind of might need to blame it on something. But I don't know what we saw that we might have needed, if that was crucial in us losing the game, if it was but extending that playoff would definitely help out.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and Jerry, and where you're coming from, as far as go ahead and state your case and make sure that the committee, they know of all of the unique circumstances. But it was the way that Alabama lost. I mean, Pat hit on it at the beginning of the show, and I do agree. I'd never really thought about what a touchdown loss would have meant, but it's really hard to point to one player. If it's Lawson, if it's Ryan Williams, and that should have been ruled this way or that way, you got beat 24-3 by a team that chose to throw 11 passes the entire game. Their quarterback is in the transfer portal and reportedly headed to go and play in Starkville for Mississippi State. It's
if you want to get really into the weeds of it, don't have 2 guys wearing the number 2 out there on special teams against Vanderbilt and then give up a 15-yard penalty that leads to a touchdown that ultimately is the difference in and again, I know these are really going through the weeds here, but you can look back at a number of different opportunities that were missed for Alabama over the course of the season.
And I've seen different texts, and this is the minority, by no means the majority, but for people to say that we're toting the water for Alabama. Nobody on this show has ever made one comment today that we think that Alabama got absolutely screwed. We're sitting here talking about Alabama, and ultimately they made the decision a lot easier for the committee, and they should have handled their business. No one is saying that Alabama got robbed here. This is more really about the criteria and moving forward. Are we going to continue to have these conversations on the Monday after Selection Sunday? But going back to what he asked about the expansion, I don't have a problem, Pat, with 16 teams.
I don't either. Also, keep in mind that the Big Ten, they gave a proposal to the whole group. It was the 3-3-2-2-1-1-1 model, okay? That is 16 teams, where the SEC and the Big Ten would get 3 automatic qualifiers. Then the Big 12 and the ACC would get 2 apiece. So that's 10. Actually, it was a 14 team. My bad. Not 16. It was 14. And then the group of 5 each would get 1 apiece. That was the proposal that the Big Ten put on the table, and they denied it. They voted it down. They said no. And then they came up with this convoluted system that we're currently working under. So the Big Ten actually put it out there and it was going to be 3 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, 3 for the Big Ten, 2 for the Big 12, and 2 for the ACC, and then all the group of 5 would get 1 apiece.
But
and that was
and if we expanded to 16, then the argument would be this year in particular. So Alabama, you would be in, Ole Miss would be in, South Carolina would be in. But the argument would then become between a BYU team and Ohio or an Iowa State out of the Big 12.
And then the Iowa State argument would be, well, we played for our conference championship.
Yeah, we had to play an extra game.
And you're penalizing us by not putting us in.
But then after that, who is really making the argument? Missouri? Illinois, Syracuse, Colorado, UNLV, Memphis. I think that maybe if we expand to 16, not that we won't ever have controversy ever again, but and you think about it, and I brought this up, and Pat, you might not have been here, but you look at the NCAA tournament and how many teams compete, and it's much more. It's like triple the number almost that we get in college football at Division I level, but we get 68 teams playing in a tournament. If you want to go percentage of Division I teams that make a college football playoff, it seems like out of 134 teams, if that's the number now, that 16 is a good number.
Yeah, I brought this up last week. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you look at college basketball, college football, and all the professional sports, college football has by far the lowest percentage of teams that actually make the playoffs. I mean, think about the NFL. You get 14 out of 30. That's almost half the league gets into the postseason. So college football at the FBS level, at least, is quite selective and behind a lot of other leagues in that sense.
So other stories that we're paying very close attention to what's happening in college football. You got the transfer portal that is officially open. A lot of Alabama and Auburn players have been seeking the transfer portal. Also, we're going to give you the very latest from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. You had John Sumrall from Tulane pull his name out. You've got Matt Campbell who talked to North Carolina, but it appears at this moment that a former NFL legendary head football coach could be on his way to Chapel Hill.
Really excited. Chapel Hill.
It is 12 noon here on Jocks 94.5. Pat Landrum, Molly Conrad with you until 2 o'clock. Got a full bank of phone calls. We're going to get to as many phone calls and texts as we can coming up. I was just talking about the situation going on in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So over the weekend, and we heard this story late last week, that Bill Belichick, the former New England Patriots head coach, had conversations. Matter of fact, those conversations, actually, a group of folks from Chapel Hill went up to New York City and had another meeting over the weekend. And so John Sumrall, the outstanding coach at Tulane, he had conversations with North Carolina. Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator at Alabama, he had conversations with North Carolina. And Matt Campbell. Now, Matt Campbell's situation at Iowa State, he told him, look, I'm not going to talk to you until I get through with my conference championship game. Well, the conference championship game was finished. He had conversations. Well, Sumrall has pulled his name out of consideration. Apparently, the negotiations with Matt Campbell did not go very well. So now North Carolina is continuing to have discussions with Bill Belichick. And as of this moment, according to Inside Carolina, who they're the ones that broke this story about a week ago, that as of right now, Bill Belichick is the only person that North Carolina is actively pursuing. Now, needless to say, Bill Belichick has had plenty of things on his list of things that he wants to have happen in Chapel Hill. But I guess, Landrum, the part that's weird to me is that you get rid of a guy in Mac Brown that's 73 years old, and you're potentially about to bring a guy in that's 72 and has not coached in college since I think him and Nick Saban coached at Navy together back in the old days.
I'm just surprised that this name has not, or this program has not attracted more high-profile names.
They got the money. Good facilities.
And I'm like you. It seems like now this is just name value. I'm not saying that he can't coach at the college level, but you're going to have someone who is, for 99% of their professional career, coached at the professional level.
Well, and him and Mac Brown are the same age, or within a year of each other.
No, Bill's
well.
the spring chicken. He's 72.
Sorry,
his 23-year-old girlfriend keeps him young.
What if Bill?
Is she a student there?
might be.
What if Bill gets the job and he hires Saban to be his DC?
Okay, now you've intrigued me.
I saw a report saying that there was a stipulation involving because his son has been a member of the Patriots coaching staff.
He's done he was a defensive coordinator at Washington this year.
Correct. And I saw a report that maybe part of the deal would be, once Belichick decided to hang it up, that it would be kind of in writing that his son.
So he brings him in as DC and then elevates him.
He would be the head coach in waiting, essentially.
Well,
yes.
That could be. But why? But I'm like you. Why does North Carolina go down that road? This is a good job.
And how long do you expect, if you're paving towards the future and you're turning the corner in this whole new world of college athletics, you're going to bring someone in who, number one, is not super warm and fuzzy, but they're going to embrace all of this and having to deal with 18 to 23-year-old kids that got money and have not been told no?
Hey, he was a general manager the whole time he was in the NFL. He's got experience, right?
Well, if you bring Tom. Ooh,
to be fair,
there's a name.
Bill Belichick had a rough draft.
What if Brady says, you know what? I'm tired of this analyst stuff. I'm an owner.
Yeah, he's tired of making his $30 million a year.
I'm in the NFL. I will call plays for you, Bill. And then Saban's
as DC.
As the DC.
Maybe there's a world out there where that happens. I'd love to see it.
Well, Belichick to Chapel Hill was not on my bingo card, but something that's always on my bingo card for 2024 is the Pants Store. If you're looking for a good outfit, you got to go check out the Pants Store. They are your one-stop shop. They have a large variety of shirts, pants, shorts, rompers, dresses, and so much more. They have a game day outfit for everyone, whether you prefer neutrals or team colors. And don't forget, you can get yourself a clear bag as well. So shop online at pantstore.com or in store at one of their 6 locations in Alabama.
More of your phone calls at 1-800-239-WJOX.
Let's go to our buddy Crimson Convict. Welcome in, CC.
What's up, man? Y'all doing all right?
We're doing okay. How are you?
Oh, I've been better. I was telling Conrad. Oh, first of all, hats off and a huge debt of gratitude to the Georgia Bulldogs for denying Texas winning the SEC championship in their inaugural season, because we never would have heard the end of that.
No.
But I was telling Conrad that I had an out-of-body experience during the ACC championship game. I looked over and saw this pathetic Alabama fan pinning his hopes back and forth on either a Clemson team to blow out SMU or SMU to make the comeback, because either one of them held my team stones in their hands, right? And it never should have got to that point. And it went back to the age-old question, the most deserving or the 12 best teams? Because my question to you is this. On a neutral site, Alabama would be favored over half the field at a neutral site?
Well,
Boise, SMU, Clemson.
Well, they definitely would be over Penn State, because I saw a line last week. If Alabama would have made it and gone to Happy Valley, they would have been a favorite in Happy Valley. So you definitely say
Arizona State.
Yeah, Arizona State, Boise.
Are you talking about on a neutral site?
Yeah.
Then I think Notre Dame too, probably. Might be a pick 'em.
It would be a pick 'em.
I mean, they were a 3-point favorite at home, so.
I think the three SEC schools, they would not be.
I agree. Or Ohio State or Oregon.
Ohio State,
But Ohio State's getting 7.5 with Tennessee.
No, Ohio State would be slightly favored at home. Yeah. Well, at home, but neutral, it'd be tight.
But yeah, I mean, that's what, half the field, 6 teams?
But I see where you're going with this.
Right.
Absolutely, which we all know, Vegas isn't always the barometer, because they're setting the lines to get the best action, not necessarily the best team. But a majority of times, the best team is favored in those games. But, I mean, I guess my point is, did the committee give us any clarity, Pat, that they're trying to get the 12 best
I'm
teams?
sorry. I didn't mean to laugh like in the middle of your question, but no, they did not.
Has the committee since the let me ask you this, Crimson Conrad. Has the committee always gotten the 4 best teams when it was a 4-team format?
They did last year. I mean,
would you say that Cincinnati was one of the best 4 teams when they played in the college football playoff? I contended no.
Okay, touche. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, it was always going to come down to that, and the last caller made a really good point, Pat and Landrum. I think the biggest loss in the committee's eyes were all the money they left on the table by not having 13 through 16 in there too. They lost tens of millions, because that's a pretty sexy lineup with 3 SEC teams and a fairly, and I'm going to throw up my mouth, a fairly legit Miami ACC product, right?
Yeah.
What would that have been? Tens of millions that they left? Maybe hundreds?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay. All right.
Convict, can I ask you a question real quick before you go?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So, because I've been thinking about this, and you being a big Alabama fan as well. So let's say last year, if Florida State had been left in the playoff, and I know everyone thinks they got screwed, whatever, but let's say Alabama doesn't get the benefit of the doubt last year and Florida State makes the playoff. Do you think that Alabama would have gotten in over SMU yesterday? Do you think any part of it was them trying to maybe make up for what happened last year with FSU?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. Last year, I was of the opinion. I mean, I went back and forth with some of my friends whenever Florida State won the ACC championship game. I said, they're going to leave Alabama out, and that's a travesty, because Alabama was definitely one of the 4 best teams. But no, I 100% don't think they would have done that. They can't do that, man. They cannot set a precedent of penalizing a conference in a conference championship game just because you had to play an extra game, especially with the way they lost.
Well,
I would contend if – go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, no disrespect to what you said, but here's the problem. When you have a different committee every single year, this is not the Supreme Court. They're not setting precedents. So, I mean, basically what they're doing, it's going to be new and different every single year because you got 13 different members on that committee. Some are going to put maybe a heavier load on a strength of schedule, which I personally believe they should do all the time. And then you're going to have also a group of people that they don't care who you play. All they're going to look at is how many wins you have in the win column. And for me, that was the problem with this year's committee. They did not look at any type of downright deep data about strength of schedule. All they cared about was the fact that Indiana won 10 games and SMU won 10 games.
But as long as those teams that we're talking about, your SMUs, your Indianas, as long as they don't get blown out, then the committee is going to justify it in their eyes that they made the right selections.
Right.
Look how competitive that game was in Happy Valley we're going to get that.
Yeah, because I knew that the fix was going to be in as soon as SMU started making that comeback. Because I said, if this thing gets to single digits, there's no way that they're going to keep SMU out. No way. Zero. I contend, and you can look at my timeline on Twitter. I tweeted this literally at kickoff, that based on the people that I talked to around college football and the people in Atlanta, they gave me a strong indication that, yes, the SEC was concerned, but they felt really good based on all the data that if SMU were to lose, let's say a typical, 7 to 10 point game, Alabama was in. That was the general feeling. But the way that game ended up and Clemson jumping out to a 3-touchdown lead and then SMU fought back and tied the game and then lose the way they did, there was no way, shape, or form that SMU was not going to get in.
I do want to ask this question, and I'll pose this to Crimson Convict and to Pat. What do you think the response would have been from Alabama fans had Georgia gotten boat raced by Texas, and then you're looking at a Georgia team that just lost by a lot to a Texas team in that rematch and has 3 losses, and Alabama fans thinking, you know what? Why are we not in over a 3-loss Georgia team? That would be the argument today.
Well, I'll tell you why. And I'll go back to what Greg McElroy said earlier in the week to Golden Domer, but did not defend it on national television. I think you got to take it by conference. If you're looking at the Big 12 or you're looking at the ACC, I mean, their strength of schedules are horrible. I mean, you didn't play anybody the whole year out. But you take a conference like the SEC or the Big 10 who are consistently eating each other up in the top 25, I don't think you penalize them for that. And I think that's a natural and a realistic way to look at it.
Crimson Convict, thank you. Join us tomorrow on Social Tacos. We broadcast from 10 until 2. Let's continue with the phone calls. Eddie, college football playoff. Eddie, welcome in.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing well. Hope you are.
Well, I'm disappointed as an Alabama fan, but I also understand that it was our own undoing losing to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Pretty much guilt. If we win those 2 games, we're in the SEC championship game. Everything good. So we did it to ourselves. We didn't get screwed or anything, as far as I'm concerned. But my question is, if it's okay if I ask, but I wanted to bring this up. I couldn't get in with McElroy this morning because he was on the stage. What is Booger McFarland's problem with the University of Alabama?
I don't know. He took a pretty good. Herb Street called him out on it yesterday, which was pretty interesting.
There was tension, but there was tension. I don't know if you noticed, but there was tension between him and Joey Galloway over it too.
Yeah, I will say this: I was a little bit surprised because Joey Galloway, being the Big Ten guy that he is, he was. Yeah. I mean, he brought up an excellent. I know a lot of people probably tuned out of the broadcast after the announcement. Yeah. I mean, I had that thing on all afternoon because there were some really good morsels of information in there. And one thing that Galloway brought up, he said, "All right, let's take a look at what happened. Let's talk about SMU and how far they dropped in the college football playoff." He brought up another conference championship game over the weekend. Matter of fact, it was UNLV. Why did UNLV drop 4 spots in the final CFP poll, and SMU dropped 3 spots. Like, why isn't one treated like the other in regards? If you're gonna set the precedents as a committee, and him and Booger got into it about it because Booger thought it was laughable that he was trying to compare UNLV to SMU. But if you're saying that these conference championships matter, then if that's the case, then you need to penalize both the same.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, it seems like, and this was last year too, or the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, I don't remember. Did Booger play at LSU when Saban was there, or was he before Saban?
He was there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. He just seems like to always have a vendetta about. Maybe it's just me, but and I don't think none of the other guys do. But it just seems like to me that he just has it out for the University.
Well, there's a lot of former LSU football players and people that cover that program that are just not real happy. They're tough to be around right now.
No, they were on social media going crazy yesterday morning. Pretty happy that Alabama didn't make it.
Hey, I appreciate y'all guys. Enjoy the show.
Thank you.
Keep us truck drivers rolling, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. You know, and Crimson Convict brought this up before. Let me ask you guys: do you think that there's going to be a huge television audience on that Saturday at 11 a.m. on December 21st when SMU visits Penn State on TNT and Max streaming?
What's the game again?
Penn State and SMU.
11
a.m. on TNT or Max streaming.
I don't know what it's going to be national. I think locally, though, it's going to be fans tuning in to go, let's watch Penn State make SMU look foolish. Because we want the college football playoff committee to look foolish.
Do you think that's what it'll be?
I do. But nationally, how many eyeballs? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the first game of the day. SMU at Penn State.
Okay.
And your favorite broadcaster, Mark Jones.
I thought you were going to say Kevin Harlan.
Mark Jones.
Oh, Mark's on the call.
Mark's on the call, yes.
Do we have a optional?
I would suggest
like a Manning
doing this.
cast. Do we get a Manning cast?
Turn on your SAP button and just listen to it in Spanish.
Okay.
Or get on Twitch and follow the Guatemalan boy, and I'm sure he'll have it on.
I don't know the Guatemalan boy.
Conrad, you got his number, don't you?
We just exchanged DMs.
DMs, okay. Got to be careful.
Conrad, he my bestie. Football. De Norte Americano.
More of your calls.
The old guy, he no longer tune in.
Calls and texts. This is Reaction Monday on Jocks 94.5. It is 12:21, Jocks 94.5. Just want to point this out. This is a reminder to us here on Three Man Front and all of those out there on social media. There are parody accounts and there are certain accounts that you need to pay very close attention to their handles because they might put a logo up and you might think that they're from a reputable service and then it turns out it's not. For example, this morning, there was a tweet that went out and it had the nice on-3 graphic, but if you actually took the time to look at the handle, the @ symbol, and the name of the account, it is not anybody affiliated with On3 Sports. But they had tweeted out news, and it was very well done. I mean, it looked legitimate.
Yeah.
It says news, Auburn wide receiver Cam Coleman has entered the NCAA transfer portal. And it actually said that Pete Nakos was reporting this. And it said Coleman recorded 37 receptions, 598 yards, 8 touchdowns as a true freshman. Well, there is a member of the media in the SEC, and I'm not going to call this person out. It's someone that we know. But this person quote tweeted this report that was obviously not the case. Cam Coleman is not in the transfer portal. And this individual said that this is the type of guy that the school that he covers needs to land. If you're serious about adding impact guys into the portal, prove it.
Yep.
In other words, go get him.
And what's funny about it, it got some Florida fans too.
Yes.
Because we've had listeners on our text line that have been saying, hey, have you guys seen this? And I had not seen the troll, but the legitimate names that are in the portal. And I just said, no, where are you seeing this reported? And I never got a response back. And so apparently they went and investigated and realized it was at Gators Troll.
For as active as some people are on social media, though.
Yeah.
It'll get you.
800-239-WJOX. Do want to tell you about our friends at Dobbs Ford. This is Birmingham's newest Ford dealership. Rachel and Joey Goshen, wonderful husband and wife, managing partners there. And also you have Austin, who heads up the sales team. It's the entire group there. And right now they've got all kinds of deals, all kinds of incentives right there on Parkway East. You can get pre-approved. Qualifying is not difficult. Also, they're going to match any competitor's price, and it's just the down-home service you're going to get. Whether you ever buy anything from Dobbs Ford, you're going to be treated like family from the first moment you arrive. Alabama's largest showroom selection. Check out the F-150s, the Mustangs, the Broncos Sports, the Explorers. Great selection there at Dobbs Ford. DobbsFordBirmingham.com. Go and see them today or during your holiday shopping, and make sure you tell them Landrum from Jocks 94.5 sent you.
All right, so one more cut I want to play of Ward Manuel, the outstanding chairperson of the College Football Playoff Committee. Take a listen to this question. Now, this was deep into this show yesterday. I mean, this was like almost towards the end of the show. They brought Ward Manuel back on because Reese had a couple more questions. Take a listen to what Reese asked him in regards to how close the vote was between SMU and Alabama.
How many people would have had to change their mind to give you a different outcome for the final team into the field? Basically, I'm asking you, how close was the vote, was the ranking step between those last few teams under consideration?
Yeah, here's the beauty of the process. I don't know. I don't know how many people would have had to change their mind, because I'm a member of the committee and I have a vote. I'm leading the committee and talking about the process and what we need to go through and making sure people are committed to opening the conversation and talking about how they see things. But what I don't see is the actual vote. And I don't always, have this sense of how people voted and who voted for what unless somebody during the conversation says, this is how I see it. And so I don't know how close. My assumption is that it would be really close. This is not something we took lightly. Like I said, the arguments in the room, the discussion back and forth were passionate, where people really thought through what they needed to do and wanted to put forth in terms of the ranking. And so I would, without knowing, Reese, I would say it was very, very close.
Do you believe him?
If you believe him, That is one of the most scary things I have ever heard when we're talking about the college football playoff.
I was gonna say, is it better to believe him or not believe him? 'Cause
So
it's both bad.
the discussions, the back and forth that are going on in that room, and you can't, the actual vote, something that tells me, I asked you that question because I don't believe that to be the case. I think he knows. He didn't want Reese Davis to do a follow-up and say, well, how many was it?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but how they vote, it's anonymous, right? Like they're sitting there and they have their computer, tablet, whatever, and they go through and put in their votes. So you wouldn't know.
Why is it anonymous?
Which committee member voted for what, but you would still know what the total tally was, would you not?
You have to have a secretary. I'm just talking about Robert's Rules of Order. Like you would have a secretary of the group that would actually file we just had the votes here, and out of the 13 people, you had, 8 of the 13 said that SMU needs to, have an at-large, and 5 people said Alabama.
Well, but if you're not going to make the votes transparent to the public, why is it anonymous within the 12 or 13 committee members?
Well, and after they tally the votes, do they not sit around and go, oh, okay, well, let's look at this for a second? Do they just like, all right, here's my votes, I'm done. See it on the broadcast.
So you mean to tell me, because, we've all been part of organizations, whether it was fraternities, sororities, or whatever organizations that you volunteer for, and you've been in these behind the closed doors.
You know exactly how these people are going to vote before you even vote.
Yep.
You've had these discussions at length.
You've had animated discussions. You mean to tell me that these football coaches didn't speak up and say, well, listen, eyeball test, SMU's a better football team than Alabama. They've got more of an upside. That's why you need to look towards SMU over Alabama, or Gary Pinkel saying, you know what, Alabama, they play in the toughest. I coached in that conference. It is a hell of a conference. It is tough to win each and every week in the SEC. You got to give them credit over SMU.
And I realize why they don't go specific in how this committee member voted, because you would have a hard time finding quality college football people that would be put under that scrutiny and put under the microscope and hear it until the end of their days on this earth about how they didn't vote for this one team over another.
But for the chairperson, the person that is over this committee,
right,
and he gives those answers about, I don't know. I'm just a guy that votes. I don't know.
And to make it seem like that's a positive, like the way he's going, well, it's a good thing that I don't know, right? Because it means that there's no bias. No, how do you not know this information?
Yeah, well, we vote, but yeah. But I would assume that it was a close conversation, I guess. So why did you meet until 1:30 in the morning on Sunday, then come back at 8:30?
I was about to say, would the conversations you had in the room not give you a pretty good idea of what side each committee member was on?
Ward was busy setting up his travel schedule and his accommodations for Tampa in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you guys felt the same way I did, because when I was sitting there watching it and listening to
I'm not calling him a liar. I'm like you, Pat. I guess I am calling him a liar.
It's concerning.
But if that is not the case and he was being totally honest, then that is really, really scary moving forward.
And if it's a case where the committee does not want that, don't you think the committee, since ESPN owns the college football playoff, that somebody would have told Reese Davis or told a producer, you can ask him anything you want to, but do not ask this particular question about what the vote total was between SMU or Alabama, or the vote between giving Arizona State a laughable bye at number 4 as opposed to giving Tennessee or Texas a bye.
I will say through all of this, I do have to tip my cap to Reese Davis, because it did feel like there were especially these last 2 rankings, where you could sense that he was getting a little chippy with Ward, and there was a frustration setting in of you have got to have better answers for us than that. I mean, you could hear him there in that question. He has to clarify his own question because he doesn't trust that Ward Manuel's going to be able to sift through the context clues and give him a good answer. Like, I tip my cap to Reese Davis, because I know how frustrated he sounded on these broadcasts, and to challenge him was probably not the most comfortable thing to do. But I mean, it's embarrassing. He should not be the spokesperson for the most important decision in college football.
What's so amazing is that even before this year with Ward Manuel, they have had a really, really awful string of bad luck of having terrible spokespeople. I mean, terrible. Like, you're wondering, how do these people run athletic departments? Like, how do you manage people? And we're talking about like big athletic departments. We're talking about Oregon and NC State and Michigan. But you guys can't even get up and give a PowerPoint presentation? More of your calls and texts. This is Three Man Front, Jocks 94.5.
$12:36. Welcome back into Reaction Monday here on Three Man Front. We're going to get back to the phone line as well as the text line momentarily as we let you react to not only the conference championship games over the weekend, but the college football playoff now that we know Alabama is on the outside looking in. Well, if you want a beverage that's going to help you maybe not want to pull your hair out as much listening to Ward Manuel and the rest of the college football playoff committee, then let me tell you about my friends at Easy Hemp Co. Easy is a refreshing new beverage that's reliably microdosed with 3 milligrams of D9 THC and 3 milligrams CBD per serving. It's also non-alcoholic and free of added sugars, so there's no day after hangover effect for you to worry about. Plus, it's delicious and a great way to stay hydrated. Easy Hemp Co. is based right here in Birmingham, Alabama, so if you're looking for a social buzz with no regrets, try Easy Hemp Co. Available at Piggly Wiggly's across the state. Plus, you can visit them online at easyhempco.com to have it shipped directly to you, or use the Easy Finder map to find a location near you.
All right, back to the phones we go. 1-800-239-WJOX. As we continue to take your calls, Bill Clark will join us at the top of the hour.
Let's go to our buddy Glenn. He's in Denver. Hey, Glenn.
Hey, guys. Happy Great Monday to you.
Happy Great Monday to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, so just want to tag in on your last segment. Other thing as well, I just want to say briefly, I'm wondering if Greg Burns is rethinking all those future games with Notre Dame and Boston College and Ohio and Arizona anyway, because apparently strength of schedule no longer matters. It's just about wins. But how many times have we watched major jury trials that's been all over the news, and after the trial, you know, the lead juror, the foreman or forewoman comes out, and they talked about the voting process, and they talked about the margin, they talked about the differences, and they went through that. And of course, they didn't give names of the jurors, but they were very open about it. So how come in these huge trials that we seem to gravitate towards, whether it's CNN or Fox News, we can't have the guy who's all over college football, the lead guy, to say, I know what it was, and I can tell you how long we deliberated about it. What, does this make sense? Like, this is important. It's a big deal. It impacts a lot of fans. It impacts millions of dollars of revenue. My hunch is that he's not telling the truth because, as you guys know, like as I'm listening to you guys talk on the show, whether it's, you know, Don or the Bama hater, their bias is coming out. So as they're around the table talking, their bias is coming out, and he cannot say, I don't know how close it was or it wasn't close. He knows it was close. And I think the best thing for him to do is to say, this was the hardest game for us to pick. We went through this for 45 minutes. We took 5 rounds of voting and finally came to a conclusion, and it was 3 people who had to get swayed one way or another. That's just what he needs to do. Make it that simple.
Yeah, again, though, if you narrow it down or you pare it down, I think that just probably creates a bigger problem with the people who don't believe that they got it right and maybe moving forward. And then you get people who are reluctant when called upon to go and do this. And I do respect their time. I do respect these folks and trying to get it right, because I have to believe that they are, and they don't have another agenda that they're trying to push. But I see what you're saying. We're never going to get to that point. We're not going. I mean, hell, they won't even share the strength of schedule with us. They're certainly not going to share with us how Bill or Joe voted.
So what they just did exposes the biggest weakness of this stupid format. Like I did last week, we don't need to give a group of 5 an automatic bid. And I honestly think that the top 4 who gets a bye needs to be the 4 best teams. I don't care who it is. And the other weakness, too, is that we need to move towards a 16-team format. And like I said last week, give number 15 and 16 just a play-in game with those ranked between 15 through 18 and be done with it. And then be very open. And they have to change their metrics, guys, because strength of schedule matters. And like I listened to Coach Saban talk about this, yes, I'm not happy that Bama lost to Vandy and to Tennessee and Oklahoma. But look, they've got Ohio State scheduled, Notre Dame scheduled. They have, Boston College scheduled, Arizona scheduled. So if a strength of schedule doesn't really matter, I'm not in favor of this, but let's just go back playing Western Kentucky and Mercer and just keep it easy peasy.
Yeah.
Because I don't want Bama to lose getting in because they're going to play Ohio State and lose.
But ultimately, who are you hurting? You're hurting your fans.
Well, you are hurting the fans, but this was Nick Saban's point. Guys, remember several years ago when they were moving towards this format, they kept saying who you play matters. And so Bama went out and scheduled Wisconsin. You know, other teams have done the same. So now you're saying that this stuff doesn't really matter. Yes, as a fan, I want to see Bama play Ohio State. I want to see Bama play Notre Dame before the playoffs. But if the committee's putting, and I hear you guys about not setting precedent and all that, but it kind of is a precedent where teams are going to rethink, hey, if they're just going to pick based on wins and losses, let's just go find 10 wins and be done with it.
Well, I think, and Glenn,
thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, appreciate the phone call, Glenn. I mean, that was one of the things that all the anti-SEC, they immediately started throwing barbs at, Greg Byrne and saying, come on, man, you're a clown. Why are you even bringing up the future of non-conference schedules? Because you won all your non-conference games this year. That's not why you're not in the college football playoff. Well, that's correct. But
he's thinking ahead.
Yeah, what he was referring to is that you've got a part of the population. Now, how many people did you hear yelling at the ACC for only having 8 conference games? Did you hear a lot of people yelling about that this year? Because it seems like every year that the SEC team would find themselves in the college football playoff. That was the first thing that everyone in the Big Ten wanted to bitch about. That's all they wanted to talk about.
Well, the ACC did us a favor because 8 is all we could really stomach.
That is true. But my point back to Greg Byrne, so everybody's like, ticked off at him and is ridiculing him. But what he was trying to point out is that if we are not going to be awarded for playing a very difficult 8-game conference schedule in the toughest league in college football, why would we bring this upon ourselves to schedule an Ohio State or a Notre Dame or a Wisconsin or a West Virginia or a Florida State? Those are all the teams that they currently have on their schedule for the foreseeable future. So why do they need to schedule those games when, let's just be honest, let's go get a MAC team, or let's schedule Tennessee Chattanooga or Samford or whoever else and just get the win and have a nice afternoon at the old stadium and pay that team their $750,000 and get the W and move on.
Yeah. And I understand it. Yeah. What he's saying there. The problem is you got a Clemson team that got to play an ACC schedule. They played a tougher non-conference schedule and having to book in with with Georgia at the beginning of the season and South Carolina at the end of the season, losing both of those games. But they also played that ACC schedule, and they lost to a Louisville team on that ACC schedule. But I go back to I'll couple Texas in with this. If you want to throw in Indiana, that's certainly valid, but you're never going to get apples to apples with conference schedules. It's just the way that they're drawn up. It's unfortunate that even in Alabama they lost, but Texas, again, I'll go back to they played Georgia twice, and 2 times Georgia beat them, and Georgia did it the second time with Carson Beck with a bag of ice taped to his UCL and having Gunnar Stockton, who had appeared in how many games prior to that?
Just a couple, as in, like UMass or somebody, late mopping up the, end of the game when you're up by, 3 touchdowns.
It's never going to be perfect, but do we have a correction? And I brought this up before, but there might be some years where we only view, like this year, it seems like it's up in the air. That's why I don't really have a huge problem with it, because it's been so topsy-turvy throughout college football week in and week out. There doesn't appear to be that dominant team. And if you want to make the case for Oregon, fine. You can't convince me that they're going to motor through any team that they play in that playoff, or maybe some teams just outside of it. But do we have a year now with the parity that we get with NIL, the transfer portal, Pat, where we're looking at, let's just say it stays at 12, and go, wow, it's really hard to find 4 teams that we believe are worthy of a college football playoff. So then if we do expand it to 16, then are we talking about 12? Do we really need that extra? I contend that with the nature of college athletics now, this year is going to be more of the norm than what we used to get when we only had a 14 playoff.
Yeah. And speaking of the schedules, you can talk about Texas, because Texas had a cakewalk based on their SEC opponents, because that ticked off a lot of people, especially people at Texas A&M, because if you remember when Texas A&M came in the league, Texas A&M was in the SEC West. And so, I mean, they had to go to Ole Miss. They had to go to LSU. They had to go to Alabama. That was their road games in their inaugural season in the Southeastern Conference. But because we don't have divisions anymore, they had a little bit more of the flexibility of being able to manipulate the schedule. I don't think there's any, I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory, but I guarantee you, because Texas being who Texas is, I guarantee you they had a conversation, because I do know that there was a conversation, because Texas A&M did not want Texas in the league. And because of that, I think they gave them some concessions to make sure that if Texas, it was unanimous and Texas A&M voted to let Texas in the league, that first game was going to be played at Kyle Field.
Yep.
Ross Bjork said it publicly. They said they want in, they're playing this game in College Station. And that's what happened. But I also think that Del Conte and the Chancellor of Texas also made it perfectly clear to the SEC that there's certain things like you're not going to send us to Alabama or Georgia the first year. Now, you want to bring them to Austin? Well, okay, whatever the case may be. But I don't think it was just a blind draw that Texas just got what they got.
No.
Well, I'll go ahead and give you an idea of Texas's schedule for next year. At Ohio State, San Jose State at home, UTEP at home, Houston at home. And then you're going to have the yearly battle with Oklahoma. Do that one in Dallas. You're at Florida, at Georgia, at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, at home to Arkansas, Texas A&M, and Vandy.
And a reminder, Wednesday night, those dates of those games will be released. And I saw what the Big Ten is doing it Wednesday, like right at lunchtime. So they're going to kind of jump the SEC. SEC is going to have a 2-hour show at 6 o'clock after Paul goes off the air on Wednesday, where the Big Ten will have their released on Wednesday around lunchtime.
If Texas had lost to Texas A&M, what was the scenario? Who would we have gotten in Saturday's championship game?
If Texas would have lost to Texas A&M,
it would have been Texas A&M, correct?
It would have been Texas A&M, yes.
Even after the loss that they had to Auburn, because that was a play-in game.
Because the belief was that Texas was in trouble if they had lost to Texas A&M. So, more three-man front on this Reaction Monday. Bill Clark at the top of the hour. This is Jocks 94.5. It's 12:53, Jocks 94.5. Coach Bill Clark is going to join us here at the top of the hour. We'll talk to him about the college football playoff, what it looks like in regards to Alabama missing out as we get ready for the playoffs coming up in just a couple weeks. Holiday sales event, it is in full swing at Courtesy GMC in Trussville. Courtesy has up to $12,000 off MSRP on select Yukons and Yukon XLs. This is the absolute best deal that you're going to find anywhere in the country on a new 2024 Yukon. Up to $15,000 off MSRP on the new GMC Sierras in stock. That's right. They have over 22% off the MSRP on a brand new GMC Sierra. That's 10% off the GMC Canyons as well. You get the idea, folks. It's the holiday sales event at Courtesy GMC in Trussville. Go by and see the outstanding staff there at Courtesy. It's in their name, Courtesy. That's what you're going to get, an outstanding sales team, whether it's a pre-owned vehicle, a brand new Courtesy GMC, or if you need service done on your vehicle or the body shop. Award-winning there at Courtesy GMC in Trussville. You can visit them in person right off of Highway I-459 or right off there of Interstate 59 in Trussville next to Lowe's. Visit their online inventory at courtesybirmingham.com.
205-834-9450. That'll get you on the Courtesy GMC text line. Going to get to all of your texts, as many of them as we can in the 1 o'clock hour. 1-800-239-WJOX. Get you on the Buyer's Right hotline like Chris, who's been waiting on hold. Chris, how are we doing today, buddy?
It's all good. It's good until Conrad, you did what I told you not to do last year. You still keep doing it. You get down, so you play the break in with rim with that rim.
Everybody
song.
hurts. Yeah.
Everybody hurts.
It's fitting, right?
No. Next time you're gonna start playing Evanescence's "My Immortal." My goodness, man, come on! I told you, buck up. I'm gonna be your teammate today. I'm gonna say, keep your head up. Scoreboard don't matter. Play to the next game. In this case, play to the next game, man. I mean, you got to look forward towards Michigan. Hey, I told you, don't put your hopes up too much on the playoff bid. And again, I turned out to be right. I've been right majority of the season. We just got to give me out flowers at this point. When it comes to the playoff committee, and I think is like I think the issue being is like you're gonna have to actually have people in the committee who actually like represent like the actual at large playoff bid teams. So it's like based off how many ranked teams are in the conference. That way the whole strength of schedule penalty of it all takes into effect. Think about it. Like if you have 6 ranked teams in conference, and your strength of schedule should outweigh majority of those those 10-win teams that don't have to play strong on schedule.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the call. Yeah, I think that frustrates a lot of people because you look at the playoff committee and, I mean, they make their own rankings and they had more SEC teams than any other conference in there. And if that's not an indication of strength of schedule, then I don't really know what else is.
All right, Coach Bill Clark. He's going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on the college football playoff. That is next here on 3-Man Front. It is 1 o'clock here on Jocks 94.5. This is Three Man Front. Pat, Conrad, Molly, Landrum. Coach Bill Clark will join us momentarily on this Reaction Monday. Really appreciate so many of you giving us a call today, texting into the program on the Courtesy GMC text line 205-834-9450. Alabama got the bad news yesterday around 11:30, in which SMU made the college football playoff. Alabama did not. The College Football Playoff Committee did not take a hard look at the strength of schedules, but they believe that the two losses for Alabama, which were bad against Vanderbilt, especially that one against Oklahoma, was bad enough for them not to make the college football playoffs. We'll talk to Bill Clark momentarily about the CFP process and his opinion if they got it right.
Well, nobody does happy hour like our friends over there at Twin Peaks and Hoover, because whatever your preference is, they're going to have it all for you. From their tequila cocktails and extensive bourbon category to their top shelf spirits and cocktails served over iced balls, their local craft beers and handcrafted whiskey cocktails round out that adventurous drink menu that's second to none. And don't forget about those always cold 29-degree man-sized drafts when you go visit our friends at Twin Peaks and Hoover.
All right, joining us now on the Buyers Ride Hotline, joins us every Monday on this program, former UAB Jacksonville State head coach, just overall good guy. I like Coach Bill Clark.
He's good people.
He is good people. He joins us now on Three Man Front. Hey, Coach.
Hey, guys. How are y'all?
I figured he might say something nice about us.
Not for him.
After we said something nice
He's in
about
the
him.
zone. He's in the zone.
He's in the coach's zone.
He's dialed in.
That's what it is. Okay.
Coach, did you enjoy your weekend of college football?
I did. Yeah, I had some family came in and got to watch tons of ball, and I do like you guys, by the way.
Oh, well, good.
Thank you.
That makes me feel a little
I didn't
better.
really want to get that out there. That was kind of our secret, but I guess it's out there.
Friends
now,
like
so we'll
Coach,
go
we
with
don't
it.
need enemies, Pat.
No, we don't. I mean, we don't. That's why we don't have a lot of friends to begin with, Landrum.
That's
But
exactly right.
I'm glad to know that at least
Well,
we can
y'all are
count
on
Bill.
my show, so that should tell everything, I guess, that we're
Okay.
kind of friends. So.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. All right. So, this college football playoff mess. I know a lot of people going back and forth, not particularly about SMU or Alabama, but I want to get your thoughts. If you, as a coach, were on that committee, what would be the most important aspect that you would look at as a former coach looking at the resumes of a particular team? Would it be strength of schedule, the overall league that you played in?
Eye test?
Eye test? I mean, what are you looking at, Bill Clark?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think it's a combination of all those things. And I think based on everything that I have heard, I think we all said it. I mean, you were putting it out on social media. I think that night there was really not much else that was going to come out of what Alabama had done to themselves with the three losses, unless Clemson had blown out SMU, which at halftime I think everybody in the world thought, okay, it's going to be Alabama. And then they come back and you say, okay, wait a second. This was a team that you got to put the winner in. And I think it just worked out. Probably about the only way to knock them out was the way it worked out. I do think if teams are going to play that league the way they're playing in it, and we know what that looks like, the strength of schedule has probably got to be given more weight than the number of losses. But probably the way it is set up right now, that's probably about the only way it could have worked out.
Coach Bill Clark joining us here on Three Man Front, presented by Donahue Chevrolet. All of our guests join us on the Buyers Right Hotline, something that ties into the college football playoff, but the SEC championship game in Atlanta on Saturday. Now that we've seen it twice, once on a neutral site, also in Austin, Georgia, they have Texas's number. Is this more about Georgia getting better? Is this more about matchup, or is this more about us overinflating Texas beginning of the season?
Those are all great questions. I think Georgia is just the way they do things is very special. I do think there's a matchup there. I mean, we could go the teams that gave Georgia problems versus Georgia giving Texas problems. I mean, that's why this happens where some teams just match up better. I know that's really not a great answer, but I do think the way they matched up was better for Georgia. I mean, obviously Texas had so many opportunities in the first half to stretch that lead, and we've seen if you leave Georgia in the game, they're going to find a way at the end. And I think there might have been either a spark for Georgia with a backup and a letdown by Texas when the backup come in where they relaxed a little bit, and it cost them.
Coach, I hate to keep going back to this, but it's just fascinating to me with you being a former coach and you've played in some very tough leagues. When you're sitting there and you're looking and trying to compare this, since there is not a general overall schedule between the leagues, I mean, and you try to compare the Southeastern Conference, you have played a lot of non-conference games against the Southeastern Conference, whether you're at Kyle Field, whether you're in Starkville or you're between the hedges. I mean, you've played at all the big venues in the SEC. How can you correlate that playing in that type of difficult league into that committee room when you're trying to, I guess, decide whether an Alabama and who they have had to try to play week in and week out in that league is more strong and it's more difficult than that of the ACC?
There's really no way. I don't think there's any way. And granted, we're going to see some one-offs. We're going to see, which I think Notre Dame's definitely got a really good team. But I think, you're going to see Notre Dame go and find a way to win. They're going to lose some games. It's the week in, week out, just murderer's row, so to speak, that these guys are in. And, when and I say this all the time, when people want to make a commitment and it's that important to the school, to the fan base, that's the results you're going to get, and that's what happens in the SEC. It's important, really, to every school. Obviously, Vanderbilt has taken an uptick. They probably have not made the commitment other schools have made. That's why they haven't won as much. But everybody wants to win in college football. Let's just get that across. We all know that. Everybody wants to win. Coaches get fired. Players are on. They're all on scholarship. I do think there's been a lot more parity, as we know, thanks to NIL. But the SEC is just different because of the week in, week out importance, the brand of coaching. But let's be honest, the amount of money that is put into each program is why. And some of the players, I think, in the Southeast, even though they recruit nationally. But I don't think, to your point, I don't think there's a really way for somebody to truly understand what that looks like to go on the road and play in these environments that they have to play in each week. And that should be factored in. Obviously it wasn't.
Coach, outside of the SEC, which team participating in a conference championship game impressed you the most this past weekend?
I think we would all have to say Oregon. I was, Penn State probably scored a few more points than I thought, but they've been impressive each week. Arizona State, and once again, we have to look at who these teams are playing, but
Sure.
Obviously I think they're hot. So that's two teams. The Clemson SMU game was a great game. It was a great game as a fan to watch and just to see, the Clemson kicker make the kick at the end. And there's a lot of great games. Obviously, Oregon is still very impressive. And, I think, looking at the two brackets, I'm sure there's a lot of discussion, but I think we all go and look at the top of that bracket versus the bottom bracket. It looks way different.
Talking to Bill Clark joins us here every Monday on this program, kind of recap the weekend that took place. Okay, so we've got the college football playoff bracket is set. Do you think it's an overblown conversation where Southeastern Conference teams or Southern teams have to go north of the Mason-Dixon line? And we're really going to see, it's really not that far north for Tennessee to go up there and take on Ohio State. But is that overblown in your opinion in regards to Southern teams, or even at the times Northern teams coming down here and playing September games against Southern schools?
I think it's overblown based on preparation. I really do. I do think there's a little bit of a factor, but we'll see it sometimes where you take let's just use Miami going to play in Buffalo in the pros or some of those things. I do think we see some of that because they're so used to just pure heat. But I think really I do think that's overblown. Really, I don't say both ways. It's hard to acclimate to the Southern heat. I think that's a bigger difference to me than the cold. I really do.
Speaking of acclimating, Coach, Gunnar Stockton has to come in. Not good news for Carson Beck, the Georgia quarterback. He was sidelined for a large part of that second half, especially. Mm-hmm. You've had to deal with this in your time as a head coach, injuries, getting that guy ready. How much does Gunnar Stockton directing that Georgia defense change your mind or potentially the matchups that they're going to see in the playoff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a change, obviously, when you've got a guy that's done as much as Beck has done for those guys. But for him to get in the game, now let's think. Georgia's a top, arguably one or two recruiting class year after year after year. There's a reason this guy's on scholarship. There's a reason he's the number 2 guy at Georgia. And sometimes, it's just when you get your opportunity, it's your time to shine. I think he did a great job. Obviously, tough. The play at the end of the game when he held on to the ball. When a lot of us would probably let that ball go. I mean, gosh, but it's different. So we're going to see when they do have time to prepare for him. Because it happens so many times with a defense when the guy is just a little bit different. That it just catches them unaware. They let down. I think we alluded to that earlier, but it's going to be interesting to see how this works out for him. But there was a reason he was the number 2 quarterback at Georgia.
All right, Coach, I know you still talk on a daily basis to a ton of coaches that are still roaming the sidelines, and today is a very big day because the transfer portal opened up. And as of 11 o'clock this morning, they had already eclipsed the total day 1 transfer portal entries from last season. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're going with this transfer portal era. I mean, at the end of the day, do you see any way possible that there is going to be some type of way to put up guardrails where you do not have this, or is the genie out of the bottle and it is what it is moving forward, that players are going to be able to do whatever they want, whenever they want to do it, and it's going to be absolutely heck for every coach in America to try to keep this roster together?
Yeah, I'm praying that something is done. I mean, I think you're seeing a lot of younger and younger coaches, it seems like, for whatever reason. But not that there's anything wrong with that. I was that guy, earlier in my career, but I think you're seeing some guys just not want to deal with it, or maybe, I'm praying that something is done to, like we've talked about so many times on this show and my show, just something for some guardrails, something that just there's something specific to the tampering that's been going on that's driven so many of these guys. And there are guys that are going to get out there that don't go anywhere, which happens in this world. And then there's so many of these guys that have had so many people in their ear throughout the year. It's really a shame. And I say this all the time on our other show, is that people have no idea how much that's going on. And, no wonder their heads are all over the place. So I hope something's going to be done. I pray, that we can find a way to get some guardrails back. I really do.
Coach, the best way that you can answer this, what's the skinny on the North Carolina opening? Because now we're seeing Bill Belichick and having multiple conversations. John Summerall, he pulls his name out. Other notable names that you associate with actual college football head coaching, those guys are gone. Is that my follow-up question? It was going to be a good one, but I'll save that for our private discussions. But what is going on there in Chapel Hill right now?
And I say this all the time. I mean, the people that make decisions, I would say more and more, you got people that are probably involved money-wise in their NIL, and there's people that get it, and there's people that don't get it. And, there's people that want to win a press conference, and I'm not saying Bill Belichick's we all know he's a great coach. I'd be interested to see him in college. I really would. But I mean, he's a great coach with tons of knowledge. I just, who makes the decision at every school? What drives that? Are they getting the best coach out there? Are they getting somebody trying to win a press conference? I don't know. It's very unusual to see it the way it's headed there.
It is. He is Coach Bill Clark. And, Coach, we have the Bill Clark Show. It airs every single Thursday here at 6 o'clock on Jocks right before the NFL game. You can find that not only here on Jocks 94.5, but also on Jocks TV. We're there at the Jocks 94.5 app, and you can view it a variety of different ways. But your appearance on this show and on that show is made possible by your good friends there at Donahue Chevrolet.
Yeah, we appreciate our guys at Donahue so much. Obviously, they're a great sponsor of ours, and both shows. And you can go to DonahueChevrolet.com and check out the deals. No dealer dock fees, but I think some really neat things they've got going. They've got all kind of specials for educators and military folks and college students. So there's all kind of deals they're always running, especially right now, year-end sales. So go check those guys out. They'll give you a great deal.
Coach, we always appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, man.
Coach Bill Clark, our friend. Maybe family one day. Pat, maybe he views us as family.
I hope so.
Me too. I wasn't getting the warm and fuzzies early in that one.
No, I wasn't either.
It's that time of year. He knows the season's coming to a close, and that's when all coaches get depressed. Unless you had a horrible year, and then
and then you're celebrating.
Yeah. Hooray!
More eggnog.
I still have a job. We continue in 3-man front and Jocks 94.5.
Oh, we appreciate everybody's input today on Reaction Monday. You can join me and Landrum. We will be live at Social Taco tomorrow from 10 until 2 o'clock.
Take your frustrations out on a plate full of tacos.
And a big old margarita.
Yeah.
Well, don't get caught in the cold. Schedule your system checkup now from a trained comfort specialist. Trane has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. So visit Trane.com to find a comfort specialist near you.
I want to give a congratulations to Kirk Herbstreit, Kirk's youngest son, Chase. Is that correct, Molly? Is that his name? Chase?
Yes, Chase.
Chase. Chase Herbstreit. He's a quarterback at, I think it's Xavier High School in Cincinnati, Ohio. He signed on the dotted line. He is going to play quarterback at the University of Michigan. So the blue-eyed Buckeye, who quarterbacked at Ohio State. I believe Kirk's dad also is an Ohio State or was an Ohio State alum. And now his youngest son is going to play for that team up north.
Hadn't seen the tape.
He's a 3-star.
I like to think that Portnoy just put up, I don't know, 250,000, something like that for an NIL just to stick it to Kirk and ESPN a little bit with some of the tensions they've had in the past.
Who's the quarterback that they just got? They stole from
Underwood.
They're paying him $12 million.
Yeah, he's getting
a year,
$12
roughly.
million.
That's the guess.
So, yeah, Chase Herbstreit, congratulations. And the reason I bring up Herbstreit is because I think Kirk does an outstanding job as an analyst for ESPN and ABC. But I was disappointed. I'll just be honest with you. Very disappointed. He was asked this yesterday morning on NFL Live as Greenberg had this question to ask Kirk Herbstreit about the upcoming CFP bracket.
Well, after last year, I've learned I have no opinions about anything. I think everybody gets a trophy. Everybody gets in. I want no death threats. I want no punishment for 8 months from hashtag FSU Twitter. So I have no opinion on anything. I love everybody.
I blame FSU Dave. He started that hashtag Twitter campaign against Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah. Don't let him see you sweat, Kirk.
But here's the thing. Why do you have him on the show?
To give an opinion.
Did he just give us an opinion?
Because contractually, the $100 million they're paying him a year, he has so many appearances. I don't know. Do you think he gave him the heads up? Hey, this is going to be my take. When you come to me, I don't have a take.
I don't have a take. Don't ask me.
Yep.
He had a different setup this year. He didn't have helmets behind him like he did last year. Whenever
did it look like he was on the Imperial Death Star or something?
I was about to say, it looked like he was in Star Wars. Yeah.
It was like an Imperial cruiser, and like he was about to, he was about to be, excommunicated to the Death Star.
That's Chewbacca.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's tough.
All right, so before on ESPN, it was really funny. So on Saturday morning on College Game Day, you had Pete Thamel interview Greg Sankey. And then immediately after that, you had Reese Davis interview Jim Phillips. And Jim Phillips is so bad as a commissioner. I mean, him and Ward Manuel should vacation together, like on the North Carolina ocean front, because both of those guys are awful when it comes to public speaking. Jim Phillips actually was talking about Jordan Travis was quarterbacking SMU. I can't make this stuff up.
I know, it was awesome.
I mean, the guy is sitting there reading a teleprompter, and you can tell Reese Davis is getting ticked off because he's droning on and on and on, and Reese can't get the next question is because Jim Phillips is so fixated on his teleprompter in front of the camera. And then whoever wrote his copy forgot to put down that Jordan Travis is no longer a college quarterback, and he's never...
Pause. Next page.
Yes. I mean, it's Joe Biden reading, the college football playoff stuff for the ACC. Anyway... Take a listen to the back and forth between Pete Thamel and Greg Sankey.
Reese, 1 year ago, we had Greg Sankey about 30 yards from here on a different stage, and he famously said, one of these things is not like the other in terms of his league, the SEC, and everybody else. Greg, you obviously have a cluster of 3 lost teams. Alabama's status for the playoff is going to be in flux going into this weekend. Are you still convicted that one of these things is not like the other?
Oh, absolutely. I start with, we don't send our logo into other conference championships. We send our basketball teams to kick ass during the week, which happened this week. The second part is our strength of schedule. There's 25 ranked teams by the CFP. There's one of those with a schedule strength that would fit in any of the 16. In other words, 14 of our teams have a better strength of schedule than all but one of the CFP top 25. And by the way, you look at the principles, the first thing listed is strength of schedule. It's not about just losses. It's about the strength of how you challenge yourself. We're 8-3 against ACC teams during the season. You watch Georgia start here in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with a resounding win. You watch South Carolina with a big win, both over Clemson. This is the strongest league in college football and needs to be respected for that.
Okay, so you have said going into the season, generally about the playoff selection process in the committee, this has to go incredibly well. What would incredibly well look like for you this weekend?
Well, the context of that was really about the playoff overall. The onset of first-round games on campus, the progression through quarterfinals and semifinals. For this weekend, and I think Ward did a nice job explaining the committee's perspective on Tuesday. Now, I want to have more SEC teams under consideration.
Sure.
I've got two others beyond just Alabama being on the edge that I think are significant components in the opportunity for the postseason. But the committee has to make its decision, and we receive that. I think the committee's going to have to explain itself effectively if you ask, what does that mean for this weekend?
So how about that? He starts the conversation about the SEC football by bragging about the SEC's record against the ACC in the SEC-ACC basketball challenge, in which he was accurate. That was a butt stomping that the SEC gave the ACC, without a doubt. You thought the weekend was going to get worse for Greg Sankey? Well, take a listen to the post game on the podium, on the stage. SEC championship winning head coach Kirby Smart wants to throw a little shade at the commissioner.
You get the first round bye. What does that mean for you?
Well, it means rest for a team that Greg Sankey and his staff sit on the road all year long. We get to take a little bit of break and get ready for college football playoff. This team needs some rest mentally.
Okay, Kirby. Don't overcook your grits here.
This is just, it's so sad we're just an audio format like for this, because the video.
Oh, it's priceless.
And the facial expression that Greg Sankey makes when he's, 5 feet away from Kirby? Priceless. Priceless.
Yeah. And then, obviously the Georgia is now carrying the water for the SEC. So I guess Greg Sankey probably got off the stage and just went about his business.
Well, Kirby, how easy has your schedule been for the past how many years?
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah. 2 years ago, it was weak.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the good news for Kirby's not going to have to, with Alabama, Texas, all coming to Athens next year.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he won't. I mean, what will he complain about next year?
No, we had to play Alabama and Texas 2 years in a row. That's just unheard of in the SEC. And
I will be anxious to see if Alabama and Georgia is the first conference game.
Like it was this year?
For Alabama.
It'd
Yeah.
be interesting.
Dan Lanning, who is never short of throwing some shade at the SEC. Like, he was on College Game Day. I don't know if you saw that interview Saturday morning. And he just looked like, I don't want to talk to you people. Like, he has got so much distaste for the SEC. He went on a radio show in Portland, Oregon on Friday. Take a listen to what he had to say about the SEC and ESPN.
They love those SEC teams. You know that. You were in the SEC.
They pay the bills, right? I mean, doesn't the SEC pay their bills? I mean, who's their contract with? Is it ESPN's contract?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so that's how it works. Like, let's not pretend like it doesn't work different than that. But, there's a secret to all that, John. Just win. Just win. They can't deny you if you just win. You can't complain if you just win. So, if you lose 3 games, shame on you, right? If you lose 2, shame on you, right? Win.
Never short of confidence, that one.
Where'd he make a name for himself?
He made his name at the University of Georgia.
Oh, okay.
But he got his start at the University of Alabama.
Correct. And those reside in a certain, okay. Just making sure.
It's greener out there, man.
Okay, yeah, it is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure that Phil Knight grass is wonderful.
Yeah, and based on what we've heard of how much certain kids got to just sign at Oregon from these neck of the woods.
I'd like my own tennis shoe. That'd be cool.
I'd take almost $2 million. It's
amazing. What a country we live in.
God bless America.
No question. More Reaction Monday. This is Jocks 94.5.
A lot of great reaction today here on the show. Plenty to talk about. More of your reactions on the Jocks text line coming up momentarily. We do have Monday Night Football tonight coming up on Jocks. Imagine turning your sports knowledge into real cash with Prize Picks. It's never been easier. You can download the app today. Use code WJOX to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Even if your lineup isn't perfect, don't sweat it. Thanks to Prize Picks Flex Play, you can still cash out and double your money. Tonight, Monday Night Football. How about this? We've got a couple of different options, but if you want to go, let's just say Jamar Chase, more than 82.5 yards receiving. You can do that. I actually like that tonight. How about a Cooper Rush, less than 236 yards passing? These kind of options that you have and the matchups that you get with Prize Picks makes it great. Once again, download the app today. Use code WJOX to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. This football season, Prize Picks has you covered. Sign up today, plus just play $5 and get $50 instantly. That's right, $50 guaranteed even if you don't win. Download the app today, and once again, use code WJOX to get the $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. A reminder, must be 18 or older to play. Terms and conditions apply, and you can check out the website for details.
Courtesy GMC text line, we have had so many phone calls today, so now we're going to dedicate the remaining portion of our show today talking to you via text at 205-834-9450.
Our friend in Oklahoma who just threatened us because we have not read as many text messages, I will read his. 2.5 hours in, one text message read. I'm done. Have a good show. Thank you, sir. Boomer Sooner. You'll always have that win that you can cherish. But thanks for joining us. Kirby can sit down somewhere. Georgia had 6 home games, 4 away games, and 3 neutral site games, with 2 of those being in Atlanta. Thank you, said in Birmingham. Do you think that Kirby's comment was also directed at Texas's cupcake of an SEC schedule for the first 2 years?
I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Absolutely.
Concerning strength of schedule, what would Oklahoma record have been with SMU's schedule? What would an Oklahoma loss been a good loss if they had played the SMU schedule? Bama put themselves in a situation to allow this, but college football playoff needs to decide, is it just wins and losses, or is it the 12 best? I think it's clear what the thoughts were this year, or Indiana wouldn't have been in the conversation. Thank you, MT.
Well, regardless of what their record was, you still lost to them 24-3. That's not going to look pretty regardless.
This text, damn, Landrum, the Birmingham Bowl got the best game out of all of them. It's the 2 most talked about teams all year in Vandy and Georgia Tech. What a game. That is quite the game.
Great bowl game.
It's going to be a lot of
bunch of smarties.
A lot of gold and black.
Well, navy and gold. But it's a darker shade of navy. Midnight navy.
Local libraries are going to be packed full.
That's a stereotype.
It's a good one.
They let their hair down.
In the library.
Have some fun. E. Robinson, I know he said that he had already budgeted for the bowl game. So now I told him, look, get the penthouse
tailgate out
get
there.
the penthouse suite at the Westin. Even though, because this is totally unnecessary, limo from Westin to Protective Stadium. Do it up.
Buy us some gear. Buy us some Vandy gear.
Yeah, there we go.
Buy us some Vandy gear. We'll wear it.
I'll absolutely wear it. Make people think I'm smart.
This text, I actually have my wife has a Vanderbilt sweatshirt.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know if it'll fit me, but Greg Sankey is the biggest loser from this year's playoff selection. With the strength of schedule not considered, the other conference leaders took him to school on how they scheduled their league games.
I can promise you this, that the moment that it was decided at 11:24 yesterday that SMU made it in over Alabama, that I promise you Greg Sankey was already on the phone, probably having a Zoom. Heck, he might have been meeting somebody in person to get to the bottom of this and try to figure out moving forward how they can come to some type of peaceful resolution and fix some of these problems in the CFP.
Why don't we just go back to the BCS era rankings, says one of our listeners, and the top 24 play the playoff. No more committee. How did this get so damn complicated?
One thing's for sure, if you took the old BCS, Alabama would be in the college football playoff. They were ahead of SMU.
Also, would anybody, and I'm in favor of the playoff, I think it's great. Would anybody really have that much of a problem if it was just Georgia and Oregon this year based on how the season's gone? Kind of worked itself out at the top at least.
Drake texted. Oh, go ahead.
No, the only thing I was going to say is now the wild card is Carson Beck. I think they're going to have some type of official news on his MRI coming up in the next hour or so. And the general feeling is not good out of Athens, and he could be done. So,
who's the best quarterback playing in the college football playoff?
Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You said it rather quickly. He's been good.
Yeah.
Drake says, guys, I didn't know we had 5 teams ranked in the top 10 in basketball. Yeah, latest AP and coaches polls are out. Tennessee comes in at 1. Auburn is at 2. You got Kentucky at 5. Alabama is at 7. Mm-hmm. And then remind me, who's the next SEC team that's in there?
It's not is it Mississippi? Mississippi State was very high up there, were they not?
It's not Mississippi State.
Or they're high up there in KenPom. Sorry, it is Florida. They're number 9.
Florida.
Sorry.
You got 8 SEC teams in the top 25.
Yes, Mississippi State and A&M as well.
Thank you, Drake. We appreciate it. This one rolls in. You may have already discussed it, but what do you think the outcome would have been for Selection Sunday if Clemson had stomped SMU by 3 touchdowns?
I think Alabama would have gotten in then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. I contend that if it had been a double-digit win by Clemson.
There's essentially one scenario where SMU could have lost and still gotten in, and it's exactly what happened on Saturday.
Yep. And that was absolutely the worst thing that could have happened to an SEC team.
I think Dabo did it on purpose. He let him come back on purpose.
JJ and T-Town, the Oklahoma loss may have been the costliest game in Alabama football history. Had they beaten the Sooners, they may have had a home playoff game that would have brought in millions to the university and Tuscaloosa economy.
I mean, because you watch the 2 games that obviously the upsets in regards to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma, 2 completely different DNA games, because you never felt like Alabama was out of it against Vanderbilt. You know, they got behind because of the pick 6, and then they just had all the stupid penalties left and right. But you still felt Alabama was hanging around, and they were one stop away, you felt like, of turning it and being able to get the momentum and win that game. Oklahoma was a completely different animal. It was like after Ryan Williams was ruled out of bounds, not talking about second half, I'm talking about the first half, when Alabama had to kick the field goal.
He stepped out of bounds.
Right, he stepped out of bounds. Instead of getting the touchdown, they had to settle for 3. From that point on, it was not a ball game. Oklahoma just took it to Alabama. So 2 completely games. So that texter is 100% accurate. That could go down as the biggest upset in the history of Alabama football, was losing at Oklahoma with what you had on the line and the point spread.
Jimmy texts in and says, I don't understand all the discussions about the non-conference scheduling. It was the bad conference losses that kept Alabama out of the playoff. No, it was not about this year. It was moving forward. And if this is going to be how the committee views even playing the rigors of an SEC schedule, why go out of our way to try to schedule games that are tougher, are going to challenge our program against other Power 4 opponents where we know we can't afford a loss, much less in conference play, but especially in non-conference play. Because non-conference, that did not hurt Clemson, but they played in their championship game. You just need to be the beneficiaries of a Texas schedule and being highly thought of coming into the season, an Indiana schedule.
I mean, again, when you look at the 3, I guess the 3 major, and I guess you could say Texas A&M, Texas ends up with a strength of schedule of 21. I mean, that was the 4th best strength of schedule of the teams that was in consideration. And they ended up being the 2nd highest strength of schedule of the teams that did make the college football playoff.
This one rolls in. Conference championship games can go in the trash. They only serve as a money grab at this point. UGA gets quarterback hurt. Now, if Alabama or any SEC team, I'd cancel any Power 5 non-conference games I've scheduled. They don't help you at all. But if you get rid of conference championship game, you can value no conference again. At this point, non-conference Power foes is dead. Jason, the Shark Man in Huntsville. That was our guy that, remember, caught the shark.
Oh, yeah.
One thing's for sure, if you're watching the conference championship games, you had so many tarps in the upper deck in Charlotte. That game was not even close to being a sellout. That was embarrassing. You're playing your championship game, and it wasn't even a sellout. Big 12 had plenty of empty seats in Dallas.
And I mean, in the ACC, you had one of your marquee programs in there, right? It wasn't SMU and Pitt or something.
It was embarrassing. I mean, seeing all the tarps in Charlotte for that game. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the Big Ten wasn't much better. There was a lot of empty seats there for Penn State and Oregon. And Molly and I were texting during the game, and she brought up a good point that it was probably a lot of the Ohio State fans.
Yeah, they couldn't sell them.
They couldn't sell their tickets.
Mm-mm.
Gavin asked the question, why was there not a discussion on Texas being out of the playoff? They played one good team all year and lost to them twice. How about them Dogs? Gavin, a big Georgia fan. Well, that's why I brought it up just a few weeks ago. Nobody was talking about if Texas had lost to Texas A&M, how would they be viewed by the committee and not playing in a conference championship game? And the two best teams on your schedule, you would have losses to. One at home, one on the road. We'll never know, but somehow I think that Texas still would have gotten in.
Well, and
This was the team that was lauded.
Yep.
SEC media days, this was the team that was built to play in the NFL.
Well, and kind of to that point, I think you look at Penn State as well and you go, well, it's because of where they were ranked to start the season, right? They get the benefit of the doubt, not in the sense of we've reevaluated who this Texas team is this year. They're just still banking on how they were ranked coming into the year. And that's why, you know, at some point you have a lot of people suggesting that you need to do a reseeding of sorts because teams that are seeded up or ranked very highly to start the year, like Texas, they didn't win anything, but they got to stay at the top because that's where they started.
Wesley in Chalkville says the difference in strength of schedule being so significant but not making the difference is why SEC teams should take as few risks as possible. Bama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina would have all been 12-0 or 11-1 with SMU or Indiana's schedule. Maybe so. But again, we don't get the strength of schedule. Now we have a pretty good idea. It's not like that this company that they're outsourcing privately, this private company, that theirs are going to be drastically different than the other ones that are made public that we can decipher from.
Yeah, in the webinar, they basically told us that there were 12 data sets in regards to what goes into the strength of schedule. And then when we ask, okay, could you make those public or could you tell us those 12, they said they could not. And the only thing I could think of is that it's proprietary information of the company that they have hired, and they did not want to disclose that information.
Who owns the company? Where he's an alum? What school to go to?
This one from Tuscaloosa. Oregon got the biggest shaft. Penn State lost and got a far superior draw.
I brought this up earlier. That's the part that needs to be fixed.
Yep.
The 12th ranked team has a first round bye. The 3rd and 4th ranked teams don't have a bye. The 11th ranked team, according to the committee, Alabama, didn't even get into the playoff, but the 16th ranked team did in Clemson. They just need to get rid of automatic qualifiers. If you want the 12 best teams, right? If you're not going to give the 3 or 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten or the SEC, then you just basically need to say, okay, rank the top 12.
Well, and look at it like this as well. We just talked about Texas. All right, they had 2 tough games this year, both against Georgia, lost both of them. They're now in the playoff, and you get to play Clemson, who is ranked, 17 this past week, and Arizona State, who is right there with them.
Yeah.
So you get the best draw to the whole tournament because you lost 2 games and didn't win your conference.
And
Good
Georgia would have been better off by losing the SEC championship
Absolutely.
game. Because we all believe they still would have been in.
Yep.
And then they could have been the slot that Texas is in, and they would have played Clemson, who they've already beaten.
Yep.
And then they got Arizona State.
Yep.
Nick from North Birmingham texts in, I saw a prediction for Stanford quarterback Ashton Daniels projected to Auburn as a portal QB. Thorn 2.0. Nick, thank you for your text. I don't know. The last couple of, well, at least one transfer quarterback not named JT that came into the SEC. Jaden, he did pretty well. How about Jalen Daniels? I'm trying to fluff up. This is a guy that he came out of Buford, Georgia, 6'2". Now the TD to interception ratio is not great.
Yep, that's what's going to concern people.
Another quarterback from the Big Ten. But is this a guy that's you're bringing in to compete not only for the starting job, add depth, or is that other quarterback going to be out there? Connor Wegman is now projected to be transferring from Texas A&M to Mississippi State.
Jackson Arnold.
Or Jackson, yes, not Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman is still out there.
Yeah, because there was some buzz about Arnold maybe going to Auburn.
Yeah, it was Georgia, Mississippi State, and Auburn were the three schools that he was.
But all of those quarterbacks, though, that were in the portal, nobody was talking about Ashton Daniels.
Let's just be honest. Daniels is Peyton Thorne 4.0.
Yeah, see what you did there.
See what I did
Peyton
there?
Thorne actually
He didn't get it.
A lot better numbers coming out of Michigan State.
Did you understand what I meant by that?
4.0?
Yeah.
Yeah, GPA. Okay. I'm sorry.
It took him a second.
I know,
it actually
fine.
didn't take me a second. You reacted. I didn't know we all needed to react.
I will say, I think that's more of a response to Hank Brown transferring.
Yeah.
So you want to have
there's depth.
scholarship QBs.
I don't anticipate he's going to be the starting quarterback at Auburn. This is about depth. And this is about somebody that wants to get closer back to home. Yeah, I get it.
What is his GPA, though?
5. Did they go up to 5 now? I feel like
At
every year
Stanford?
they
I think
go
at
higher.
Stanford it's like 7.
Yeah, it's probably 7.
Stanford, Northwestern,
You think
Vanderbilt.
Andrew Luck ran him off?
Probably did. Probably walked in there and said, "You're not Stanford quality. Get out."
12 interceptions, 10 touchdowns. You kidding me?
Get out. Leave.
He is a backup. No one is expecting him to start. Thank you for the text.
Yeah, Landrum. He's not the starting quarterback.
Not yet.
We got to get through spring first. All right, more of your text. Paul Feinbaum at the top of the hour. This is Jocks 94.5. 154 Jocks 94.5 on this Reaction Monday. We really appreciate everybody's comments today, whether it was on the phone, it was on the text line. Paul Feinbaum will continue the conversation coming up in about 6 minutes from now. I'm sure he will have plenty to say on the CFP committee. What's the SEC going to do from this point on? It is interesting, Landrum, that on Wednesday of this week, Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, the Southeastern Conference will announce the dates, not the times, but the dates for the Southeastern Conference schedule. That will be Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. So it'll be interesting to see if they move some games around. For those that have forgotten, it will basically be the exact same conference schedule for Alabama and Auburn, for the exception of flipping the location of the game. So everybody that Alabama played at home this year in the Southeastern Conference, they will go on the road to play that opponent. Likewise, Auburn, vice versa.
So you get Tennessee and LSU at home, but you got to go to Georgia and to Auburn.
Correct.
Essentially.
Whereas Auburn gets a trip to Kyle Field. They get to go to Nashville.
I was about to say, if you're Alabama, you don't have to go to Nashville, so that's a good
That's
thing.
right. Vandy and Diego Pavia's 8th year of eligibility.
I want to know how many teams got off weeks before they play Bama next season.
All of them. I hear Georgia's got 2 bye weeks before Alabama next year.
You know, there was one year that literally there were like 7 opponents for Alabama.
I know.
I know. Yeah.
You actually heard that more than Ryan Williams is 17.
That's hard to believe.
Is he still 17? Is he still 17?
I saw something yesterday. It was Ryan Williams is now the youngest player to be eliminated from the college football playoffs.
That's
I'm
good.
so excited for next year, and we don't have to hear that anymore.
This one rolls in. The problem is they can't fully go by strength of schedule in the weekly rankings until about the 10th game. And by then, they've already got teams with a great record, but inferior strength of schedule ranked above teams that have played stronger teams, such as SMU and Boise, ranked above Bama.
Here's an interesting little side note in the contract between the College Football Playoff and ESPN. ESPN dictated that they must have 6 TV shows of rankings, because there's a lot of people that says, well, we don't need to have rankings until, 2 or 3 weeks left to go in this season. Nope. ESPN understands the value of the conversation. They understand the value of having a television show. So it's in the contract. You have to have 6 CFP rankings and a show.
We appreciate all of you, all of your interaction. We're live from Social Taco tomorrow. Join us as we broadcast from 10 to 2. Doors open at 11. Now bring us a figgy pudding. Paul Feinbaum is next.